don't say your social security number, but otherwise just ignore that it's here. That's what I do most of the time. And then when I run out of something to say, I look, and if somebody's smart and they put a good comment, I'll read it and we'll talk about that. That's how it works. But yeah, no, these are very chill, non-professional affairs. People like listening to the birds and the bees too. So sometimes I'll just shut up. Of course, today somebody's getting. That's a tree trimmer for sure, or it's a table saw. One of the two. I can't really hear. Somebody new with us? No. It's just me and Amelia like usual. Now, it is a little bit tough because my name is Paul's Ego, but you, every time you call me, say, Paul Jr.? This is Paul Sr. So you pull rank here, you understand.
Justly so.
Yes, right. I think so. So I'm not even in control anymore. Like I can't. But yeah, Big Papa is with me. Paul Sr. We're just going to talk. We've been talking politics all day. Kind of yicking and yakking back and forth. Is there anything we haven't covered that you wanted to politic about? I'm not going to roast you, Dad. There will be no roasting. You might roast me. But no, you loom too large in my life for me to roast you. So you're safe from that. Hi, Paul's dad, they're saying. Welcome, Ego Senior. They're loving you. Jeez. Why aren't you guys ever this nice to me when I show up? Usually I have nothing but derision for me. Howdy, Paul. Hi, Paul's dad. Yeah, they're loving you. I want to hear the P-Way trumpet story from Dad. We talked about that last night, and it seems like we pretty much remember it maybe the same way. If Paul is the ego, is Paul's dad the super ego? Yes. Id, ego, super ego. I'm right in the middle. Salt Mountain. Dad is not salty. I don't know where I got the salt from. I think it's from Mom. Because he's not very salty. That's pretty chill. I think Dad feels like he's on the spot. There's no performance.
Just talking.
Yeah, we just talk. Amelia yaks her way through
and we look at a bird or see
what
dinosaurs doing.
It's just doing that with a couple hundred people watching.
A little intimidating, I think.
Yeah, that's okay. Like I said, no expectations. Not everybody is a content creator. I just know that people love to, because they're so obsessed with me. They're so interested in parents and brothers or sisters or anything that I may or may not have. You know, they're looking for juicy tidbits.
I would imagine they're expecting me to have a beard and long hair. Is that the deal?
No. Well, I think I've told them that you keep a clean cut look versus my kind of. What would you say this is? If you had to give it a name. Hippie.
Grizzly Adams.
Grizzly Adams. Yeah.
A bear of a man kind of thing.
Yeah. Yes, Paul's dad was a based union leader. Yes, he was. Based means cool. Based means good. They're saying you're based for leading a union at one point.
You didn't tell them all those stories, did you?
I told them some of them, yeah.
The crying towel?
I told them about the crying towel. I changed the guy's name to Joe Beavers to protect his innocence in the story. His name is Joe Beavers, and he had his crying towel. I told him about, yeah. I spent quite a bit of time in that union hall with you. You know, I think just the necessity to have a place to put us while you did the business, but you know, I was listening a lot of that. I loved going to those. It was cool watching you kind of like run the whole table. All those big personalities in the room, and you had to wrangle it, and you did it from like a quiet place, which was interesting to me always.
Were you there when that international rep came in and I told him he was sleeping with the company? That he was 500-pound black guy. Put that finger in my face. I ain't sleeping with nobody. Those kind of moments.
Yep. I saw quite a few of those. I remember one time we went into a bathroom with that guy, and he farted and said something to you. And I asked you, what was that? And you said, when this happens, he says he's blowing me a kiss. So I guess he was saying, I'm going to blow you a kiss.
And he'd say my name with a W in it. It was always the last name.
Poake.
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 Yeah, kind of an accent.
But yeah.
Intimidating.
So he was a what now to you? He's the
international rep. I was president of the local union.
Right.
So if we go to arbitration, he would get involved, and he would come to represent.
Got it.
Yeah.
So a bombastic personality. I remember him being a pretty big person, not just a big dude, but just like a big, overbearing kind of personality.
I have to say that he was probably the source of some of my disappointment with the union, in that he took me aside the first time I had a bunch of grievances that were going to the plant manager, and he was coming out to represent my people.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Parky, here's what we're going to do. You just leave it to me. I'm going to scream and yell and snort and pound the desk a little bit, and then we're going to give them what they want. I said, what? I was really disillusioned. I said, no, we're going to give people what they
need,
what they deserve,
yeah,
what they need. We're going to try to help out the people. He said, well, sometimes you got to give away a few to gain a few. So the corruption in the union was really disappointing.
Do you think there was any truth to what he was saying, though? The idea that you got to pick your battles almost, like you give a little away here, and then when contract negotiations come up, you can point to how you folded, even though, you know, was he playing like a long game and you felt more obligated to treat every grievance equal, right? Did you get that sense from him, or did you think he was just in bed with the company, like you said?
The International's main goal is not to lose members, right? They
Right.
need the dues.
Right.
So they don't want to be too oppressive to the company, because they'll start looking at ways of getting rid of the union.
Right.
And going without a union altogether. So there's kind of a conflict of interest there, I think, at that level. At my level, no. As I was there just trying to get a fair shake for the guys.
Well, that's why I think I remember so much about being in those meetings, is because if it was just boring corporate business or whatever going on in those meetings, I think I probably would have tuned out and read a book or played with, my sister or whatever, right? But there were real emotional human problems coming across that desk, and I could just tell by watching you do it, did your best to address those for people and to have people feel good about working where they were working and be taken care of, right? Like just the fact that Joe Beavers felt empowered to stand up and whine about the crying towel says something about the union. I mean, that might be an example of a ridiculous grievance, but that guy held that meeting in thrall for about 20 minutes. Because he was aggrieved. He didn't like being made fun of. He put in his work like everybody else did, and he deserved the same respect. There's something to be said for that. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's an open forum for him. But he's a good example of my time was spent 90% of the time on people that probably uh, didn't deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to focus on that that gal that's working her tail off and missed time because she had to take care of her children, and try to take care of the people that don't whine and complain all the time, that are just trying to make ends meet.
Right.
So that part of the job was rewarding. Often I found myself in meetings where guys getting fired for absenteeism, and he says, "Guy, I was late. I got a ticket on my way to work." I said, "They're not firing you for that 20th time you missed work. It's those other 19."
Yeah.
And this just pushed it over the edge. So often I find myself in situations like that where you just try to keep the guy's job.
Right.
You know, take a short suspension and bring them back. But yeah, too much of my time spent with people that really didn't care that much about their work. But there were those rewarding moments when you got involved and you actually helped somebody, and that's a good thing.
Right.
That's a good thing.
And when you help in a union environment, right, you help one person, you help everybody, right?
Yeah.
To a certain extent. I mean, because everybody has that same protection and they know they can come when they need it. So that's one of the positive things about that, right?
The company, I was walking toward the factory with the plant manager at the time. He was a new plant manager from France.
Mm-hmm.
And he said something to me that kind of disappointed me. He said, "Paul," says, "I look at it like people are problems. If you eliminate people, you eliminate problems." What a sad way of looking at it. And quite honestly, I think unions exist because of poor management. If management took care of their people properly and worked with them properly, then you wouldn't even need a union.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, it's all about money, right?
Yeah.
So his idea was we need more automation, less people, less problems. Well, maybe some wisdom to that, but it's just kind of unfortunate. You got people trying to raise a family and work, and your boss really just looks at you like a number or a piece of machinery that he can get rid of.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
Well, the union is a stopgap preventing companies from treating people that way. It forces them, if that person engages in good and faithful labor or whatever, it forces them to take care of that person if they should get injured or they retire out, and it ensures a safe and healthy work environment and the amount of hours that they can handle, and that sort of thing is all guaranteed by the union. And if, in instances where there aren't strong unions, you see working conditions that are well outside of that, right? You see mandatory 12-hour days, and you see people working 2-3 jobs to get by with no benefits, and really is just trading your life. I mean, what's more precious than your time, right? That's one of the things that I remember being said at one of your union meetings. I don't know if it was you, or maybe it was, one of the other people that said it, but it probably was you, saying that, like, the most precious commodity that you have is your time, and labor is your time. You're giving this company your time that you could otherwise theoretically be spending with your family, right? And it is their job to take care of you on the back end, to compensate you properly for that precious time you're giving them.
Yeah.
And
I have to wonder, did you ever share that story, that probably the most extraordinary thing I was involved in as president, where I got called in about an employee, a black fellow, said that he was getting threatening notes put in his laundry.
Mm-hmm.
Did I tell that story?
I don't know. It doesn't ring a bell.
So I get called in the personnel office, and they said, "We got a problem." And I'm president of the local at the time. I said, "Well, what's going on?" She says, "Well, we want to get your permission to bring in a handwriting expert and see if we can figure out who is writing these threatening letters and putting it in the laundry of this employee."
Mm-hmm.
And he was a laborer in the maintenance group.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Well, what kind of messages are they?" And you could imagine it's, we're going to get you the N-word and things like that.
Right.
So it was really kind of demeaning. I wanted that taken care of. I didn't like that.
Of course.
So I said, yeah, let's do that. So they got a hold of the local sheriff's office, and they sent over a bunch of files, and finally they came back to me and says, well, we checked against all of their, when they signed their application to work there, and it didn't match. So we didn't think anything more of it, and I had seen the letters, and I went into the maintenance office, and on the desk was a note from an employee that we need more paper towels for the restroom.
Mm-hmm.
And I recognized the handwriting.
It was the same one on the note.
Yeah.
So now you.
So I told the maintenance supervisor, could I have that note? He says, yeah, we've already taken care of it. Go ahead. And I took it to personnel, and I said, here's your guy. Here's your guy. And I said, they said, wow, how did you miss this? They said, well, we actually just kind of sent in comparison applications for the handwriting analysis of the people we thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I said, what are those people? Well, white people, you know. Turns out it was a black guy doing it to another black guy.
So they were testing for somebody that they thought fit the profile of somebody that would write that.
Yeah.
So they just tested the white folks.
So anyway, they had him pretty dead to rights from that point on, and come the what they call the termination meeting, because you're always suspended pending termination. So
Right.
that meeting was with the plant manager, personnel manager, myself, and this rather large black guy.
Yeah.
And I always do as I usually do when I come into those meetings. Says I need a few minutes with the complainant, and then we'll be ready to meet. So I took him into a private area, and I said, look, they got you dead to rights, and you can play this one of two ways. One is, I did it, I'm sorry, I was only kidding, it'll never happen again,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you might keep your job.
Mm-hmm.
The other way is, if you're going to deny it, here's what I need you to do. Say, I didn't do it, and then shut up. Don't go on. Don't try to explain it. Just say, it's their burden of proof. Correct? Now, I want you to understand that they kind of got you dead to rights, but it's your decision.
Right.
So he nodded. Not a lot of conversation there. We went back into the room, and there sits the company on one side of the table. We're on the other side of the conference room table. And it comes to that point. They kind of presented their evidence, and it was pretty compelling.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, I didn't do it. And it kind of got silent, and I thought, for the first time, somebody's going to take my advice.
Yeah.
But no.
He
Then
went on.
He came in, he says, that Uncle Tom, he needed a wake-up call, and I was just trying him to, be a better black man, and he just went off. And it got louder and louder, and he stood up and lunged across the table at the personnel manager, who was a woman. She stood up and fell back over her chair. The plant manager got up and ran like a sissy. And what eventually happened, once it calmed down, I had this guy literally by the ankles on the conference room table, reaching for her throat. And they both exited, and next thing you know, the security showed up, and we walked him out to the gate. And I said, that didn't go well, buddy. And I'm quite honest, I don't think you have a job. So here's what you need to do. No threatening phone calls. Don't show up here, because you're no longer welcome, and it's just going to make your thing worse. So he ended up getting terminated, but that was one of those moments when things just get out of hand.
Oh yeah.
So yeah,
That's actually really. I can't believe you never told me that story, or at least I don't remember it. You must.
yeah, years ago, another lifetime.
Yeah. Oh, that's crazy. Yeah. Just some personal beef between the two of them, and
I guess he just saw him as not being sticking up for the black folk or what. I don't know. He thought if he could incite him to be angry somehow, then he would, it would change the way he was.
Mhm.
It really was kind of demented thinking. But the guy just couldn't get out of his own way. And certainly lunging across the table at the personnel manager, not a good way to go.
So at some point, you joined the dark side. Darth Vader came to you and said, "Join the company."
I was always kind of that way. But what had happened, the engineer that was running the department ended up getting moved on to a different job. And I was running the department, and we had a power failure. And I don't know if you've never been there during a power failure, but you can imagine these furnaces with natural gas flying around,
Yeah.
3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, half the size of a football field, two of them.
Yeah.
They need power, and they need all the controls working to keep all that under control. And we had a failure, and I went to the control room as usual. We had water jackets blowing up and steam spewing out. It was just a mess. And in walked the current plant manager, who would have been my boss when I finally get the job. And they just observed, never said a word. And when they walked away, later they called me up front and offered me the job. So that's kind of how it all came to be.
Yeah.
But I didn't look at it much different, because I kind of kept the attitude as kind of like to help people,
Yeah.
which is different, I guess. But I found that people, when they like their jobs and they feel respected and part of it, that when visitors come to help and the place looks good, I call them all together and thank them for the effort, and they took pride. A little pride in your work goes a long ways. So
Did you feel at that time disillusioned with being on the union side of things? Were you just kind of done with that?
I'm glad it happened, because it gave me perspective. Because there's bad on both sides,
Sure.
So I got to see that. And I think it helped me be a better manager. And I had a very good relationship with the union. And
Sure.
I knew the international rep, and I knew all the baloney.
Right.
So we had a different kind of relationship once I became.
Well, I mean, that was probably one of the reasons why they offered you the position was, I mean, it's like a lobbyist, right? Somebody that used to be a congressperson, still knows everybody in Congress, right? I mean, they got that when they hired you. That was part of the bargain for them.
I'd like to say that it's common for the president of the local union to go management, but on the contrary,
No.
there's usually kind of bad blood there.
Sure, I would imagine, but you kind of defied that.
Maybe they, having dealt with them many times in termination meetings and stuff, I knew them very well, and they saw that
Well, they knew you to be fair and even-handed.
Yeah. But not. They also knew that I wasn't the kind of guy to bribe. I wasn't receptive to that kind of behavior.
Right.
But there were times when we had problem employees, and we would talk kind of without them before we brought them in.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always kind of what's best for the company often is what's best for the employee. If we can get him to change and become a better employee, he's already trained. You don't have to train a new person. If we can salvage or save this employee, maybe that's the way to go.
Yeah.
And we were able to do that many times, and sometimes it's just beyond hope.
Sure.
When they dive across the table.
Yeah, you pretty much wrote your ticket at that point, yeah.
But often people fire themselves. They really have to work at it in a union environment.
Yeah,
There's
for
so
sure,
many,
yeah.
So many guardrails.
Once they've got full status, right? So it's like you didn't get full union status when you were hired there, right? You had to have a period of good service or whatever.
Yeah, when you first get the job, you're on probation, your probationary period.
Right.
The company can fire you for any reason.
For cause.
They don't even need cause during that probationary period.
Sure.
But once you finally do that, and then they start taking your dues out of your check,
you get your card.
They have to give you,
right.
Go through the steps.
Did you think that the union was a particularly, was it a vibrant union? Was there a lot of participation, or did you feel like most people took it for granted and didn't really, the meetings and the get-togethers and the union activism and stuff, because you guys went and picketed a few times, right?
Yeah.
And did you find that a lot of people in the union participated, or was it just a few?
I think the majority of the people that are in unions aren't active. They're not really involved. As long as things are going well, they're not getting laid off or jerked around on their pay.
Right.
So for the most part, people just kind of hold their heads down and earn a living.
Right.
They're not active in the union, and when they do get in trouble, then you might get some support and extra people showing up at the union hall. I got to say, those times that you were there, we had some colorful meetings,
Yeah.
and it actually was funny at times.
Oh yeah.
And that whole crying towel thing, when I had to tell Joe, I said, Joe, I don't know if you understand it, but I don't go punish people. In fact, if we caught the guy that put that crying towel on your locker, I would be the guy in there defending him and trying to keep his job for him. Oh, he got so mad after that. So,
Yeah, I know. I do. I remember that was one of the reasons why I think it was impossible for me to not pay attention to it when it was there, because it wasn't always a screaming match, but it was real problems, and people they'd get bent out of shape, and it was just compelling as a kid. It was like a reality TV show almost, because I had no role in it. I was just an observer, so I got to kick back and just kind of be in the corner, and I learned everybody's names that way too. People that weren't already around at parties and get-togethers and barbecues and such. I learned all these names and what their positions and what department they worked in, and I followed some sagas here and there, and it was super interesting. And I definitely colored my personality, I think, a whole lot too.
well, imagine this, PJ. I became management after being president of local union. It all kind of happened around the time of my divorce.
Yeah.
And your mom.
Yeah.
Do you know that she was a direct report to me?
Yeah.
For
Which
about
is
a year after I took that job.
Which is super odd.
Which taught me tolerance and patience. And,
yeah, I
and
bet.
Character. It kind of built my character a bit.
Right.
I was constantly having to check myself and say, I got to be fair to her, just the same as I am everyone else. She probably felt that she had influence over me more than the others, so I always had to check that.
Well, it's a tightrope act, right?
It did teach me that, and that I know I've shared that with you many times, that you can't really be friends. Certainly not man and wife or ex-wife.
Yeah.
It makes it difficult.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's a sign of a good boss, that you navigated that properly.
Wow.
And that there wasn't a giant, because it wasn't like a giant drama fest. She kept working, and I mean, there might have been drama behind the scenes, but
I have to say, she was a very good worker, so she made that part easy for me.
Yeah.
She was not a goof off. She was a really hard worker.
Yeah.
Maybe not the greatest wife at that time, but a very good worker.
Yeah.
Very good worker. So yeah.
He sounds like Paul, but brighter. You know what? Fuck you, dude. That's mean. You jerk.
I thought it'd be like a love fest, PJ. Wow, you're getting some.
Well,
you're getting some salt.
I'm getting the salt from them. Yeah, of course. They all love you. It's all positive from you. You sound like your dad. Your dad sounds good for his age. You got all positives in here.
Oh, for an old man, huh? They call me old.
Ancient. Yeah. I told him how old you are. Does Paul Sr. have any criticisms of unionization conceptually? Like, overall? Like, what would... Like, if you... like you used to work as a consultant. Let's say the big unions called you in to consult on, hey, we're trying to make this work right. Like, what would you fix about the process?
Unfortunately, I think as unions got bigger, corruption got worse.
Of course.
If you look at Teamsters, they can be a little bit abusive, I think. Abusing their privileges and pushing things.
Yeah.
But money corrupts.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in the very beginning, and you remember when we went to West Virginia and I went to that training and I took you and Mary Jo on that?
Yeah, Morgantown.
In that, they talked about the history of unions and how they got started. The very first unions were around the coal mines, south of West Virginia, and the way the union got started was they found that the pension plan that they had was building funds. They weren't paying out any pensions. People were dying of black lung, and they didn't really put two and two together until they saw that correlation. And that's when the unions got involved. You're killing our people, and they pushed for safety for the employees, and then it kind of turned into, we're going to be in between you and the company and help you. And by organizing together, it gave them power to get a healthier environment and the masks and things that they really needed. But I thought it was interesting that they figured all that out about black lung being caused by coal simply because people were dying and not getting their pension.
Right.
So kind of sad beginning, but and in those days, I think unions were needed desperately. The sweatshops, people abusing the employees and taking advantage. I think unions had a purpose. In some industries now, I think it's outlived its purpose. It's gotten away from its original goals, and like I said, if companies took care of their employees and valued them, there would be no need for unionization. I think, not that I'm a big fan of Tesla, but Tesla's not union, but he takes care of his employees, very demanding of them, but he rewards them properly and takes care of them. So therefore, they have yet to vote a union in.
Sure.
So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Yeah.
How to make it work better. I think if unions cared more about their people and got away from the money aspect, and if International wasn't incentivized to, they would sign contracts. I negotiated 3 contracts with the local rep. I was local rep and the international rep, and with the corporate people when they came in, and I found it to be the international rep was almost an advocate for the company. They would say, well, we need to agree to that and get this thing signed. You know, we need another 4 years. And I said, well, why don't we try to get something for the people? Inflation has gone up this much. We should get that much pay.
Right.
And what about a 401k for the people? You know, all we need is for you to administer it and take the money out of their checks, and they can opt in or out. And it was back when those weren't very common.
Right.
It was just like struggling, and I was fighting more with the international rep than I was with the company.
Yeah.
And we asked for things and got them.
Right.
Had we not asked, you wouldn't have gotten them. So I don't know. I think that it's with the tiers and the international people and the AFL-CIO and all, it's gotten so big and gotten corrupted. And I think that's sad.
Yeah.
When on a local level, the most unions locally are trying to do the right thing for their people. I think that's still needed, but when it goes to the international level, I think it's gotten out of hand. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Sure.
Having been from both sides.
So money is kind of the problem. Like
Money and power. I think,
yeah.
the Teamsters got corrupted and actually got involved in some gangster kind of behavior, which is not good.
Well, they worked with the mafia in some cases, to fund pensions and stuff. There's some people that would say, like, any port in a storm, you know what I mean? They went to the mafia because the government was so hostile to them and wouldn't help them, and so they went to this other money source. But yeah, I mean, clearly the influence corrupted, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely like everything we've talked about since you got here yesterday, political and stuff, we're just social. It's you start digging into it, and it's such a complex issue, right? There's not just one. If there was one button somebody could push to fix it, somebody would have hammered the button, It's like a multi-tiered issue.
I think most people, there's always the few that are out there. Most people want homelessness taken care of.
Yeah.
And to do it in a humane way. We just don't have the answer for that, right? Because I think it's so complex. Drug addiction, mental illness, and then just some people just like that style of life, which I can't imagine. But how do you deal with them in a fair way?
Sure.
And and we had some really good talks. So I think we're almost on the same page.
Well,
We're
I feel
those
like a lot of times when we talk politics and stuff, we have different routes to the same conclusion, right?
yeah
So we were talking about something, and I'll tell you, like people on the left, this is not a popular thing, like amongst what you would call liberals, right? Talking about globalism, and we were talking earlier about you had asked me how I feel about Trump, wanting to do maybe grab Canada or Greenland or whatever, right? And I said I'm all for it, right? And I think we're maybe all for it, not for the same reasons, but ultimately, I think we agreed on the need for there to be some kind of uniformity for people, not necessarily equalizing, but giving people at least equalizing people's opportunity would do wonders, right? And then there would be no more, so-called illegal immigration, right? Or what little there was would be, like you said, way easier to police that Central American border at the tip of Mexico than it is that broad, wide Mexican border, right?
yeah yeah yeah. I think we do have different views on that, but yeah. Uh, I think Trump is going to be in there for 4 years. He's already kind of 100 days in, and I see an urgency that he didn't have the first go round. He's really trying to fix everything, knowing that in 4 years he's not going to be able to. I know there's talk of him running again.
I mean,
I don't know how viable that is.
he says he's running again.
If I was him, I would run. All right,
Run away.
I'd take my money and go to the golf course and never get involved in that stuff again. So
Yeah.
but I'm happy that he's willing to get in there and try to help. So we'll see. We'll see. We got 4 years, and hopefully we'll get things turned around on the immigration front. And I don't believe in manifest destiny like it used to be, where we go in and kill the people and take over the land and
No.
things like that. I'm not there. But if Greenland's out there on their stuff and we have interest, their raw materials, their strategic location is good for America, why not bring them into the fold? Because it's not a lot of people there. It's kind of a bleak area.
Yeah.
So I think it would help them. It'd be mutually beneficial. Why not?
Sure.
I don't like what we're doing with territories. I would rather see them as a 51st state.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree with you on that.
Because I'm not liking kind of how the territory thing works out for some of them. So Puerto Rico and not so good.
No. We're in agreement on that. Yeah, see, in terms of now I'm not as rosy on Trump, but I'm also not as, and I get a lot of criticism for it. I'm not as doomerish, I guess, as they would say on Trump, as a lot of people on the left are. Because I've just kind of been through these Republican and Democratic administrations, and I know the Trump's done some pretty extraordinary, unprecedented things in his first 100 days, but overall, it's business as usual in the country. And I think people overblow and panic about things, and kind of the sky is falling when Trump got elected, and I really wasn't all that worried about it, and I still am not. So, I'm not the most rabid, froth-mouthed liberal opponent for a more conservative person, because I feel like I can kind of understand why Trump voters voted for him. When you set aside the critiques and stuff of the left, I think a lot of what got him elected was that he was disruptive, right? Like, he's not a career politician, and he kind of upsets a system that feels like it's stagnated and is too slow at dealing with things, and he kind of went in there and shook it up. And I feel like that goes a long way with a lot of people, because a lot of people are just disillusioned with voting for politicians who say they're going to do this, that, or the other thing, and they just never do. And so I have empathy for Trump voters on that front, right? I can see why he got elected. It's not a lot of liberals, if you talk to them, or leftists, it's like they can't even understand the mind of a person that would have voted for Trump, right? And I think that cuts two ways too. I think Trump voters have a hard time imagining the mind of somebody that would vote for Kamala or that would hate Trump, right? And there's this kind of divide, and ultimately those people are more alike than different. They make the same amount of crappy money working the same crappy job, and it really would benefit them to be together on some things, but they seem, or when I say they, I say we, seem intent on fighting rather than finding common ground.
It is frustrating when you look at the government and the literal corruption that's happening, the insider trading. Uh, some guy gets elected to the Senate, and 3 or 4 years later, he's a multimillionaire, and
Mm-hmm.
it's gotten away from the roots, the very beginning, when people that helped in the government and were representatives of the government were working people. They left their farms.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to make a difference and help, and were eager to get back to their place because, they sacrificed that while they were gone, get back to their families. And
Right.
now it's a boondoggle. I'm not a boondoggle, but it's a kind of a scam.
It is. It's a grift. It's
And I wish, are we too far gone? Can we fix that? I don't know if we can get it back under control. Because the very people that make the laws and vote on it are the ones that are involved in it.
Yeah.
So we're not going to see Nancy Pelosi put a bill out to stop insider trading.
No. I don't think that's going to come out of Donald Trump either, to be quite frank.
It
So
has
they-
to be, well, it can come to his desk. I think he would sign it. If
I
they
don't think
put it
he
on his
would.
desk. I don't know.
I don't think he would. I think insider trading is all too juicy. Nobody like it. See, that's one of the problems that I have is I feel like that there is this kind of animosity in public between these Republicans and Democrats. But then I think as soon as the C-SPAN camera goes off, they're having a beer and they're chuckling because ultimately, I think preserving the status quo is what they really want. They want to keep the money rolling in.
Stay in power.
Right. Keep
Right.
our power, keep our influence, and keep the money rolling in. And if that's all happening, who really cares? We'll promise we're going to look into this gun violence thing, but nothing will ever happen. We'll ban bump stocks and call it a day. Retarded, right? We'll look into, stagnant wages, and we'll do a labor investigation. We'll have a labor subcommittee, and that happens, and whatever happens for working people. No matter who's in power, right? Not a lot.
Yeah.
But I do know one thing. The rich have gotten way richer in the last 40 years, right? I know that much. So that seems to be the problem to me. I don't know if that's a socialist way of looking at it, but I just feel like if money is power and absolute power corrupts absolutely, then there has to be a way to sever the connection between, like, I think you said it, right? The idea that somebody can become a senator and leave 4 years later a multimillionaire. That has to stop.
Yeah.
You can't be enriching yourself with public office. There needs to be hard and fast rules about how people profit from that position. And that is who's going to vote that in when they're on the gravy train.
Yep. It's a direct conflict of interest. So how do you fix that? I don't know. And I think a lot of people are frustrated like I am, and they look at Trump as being a hand grenade thrown into the mix and maybe straighten some things out.
Or force some of it to collapse and rebuild something that works, right? I get that perspective.
Yeah. And I think it's almost been true in most cases. The ones that are complaining the most turn out to be the most corrupt. Nancy Pelosi, they're all just, they're fighting to keep the status quo. We want that money flowing. We want all those companies giving us money, the pharmacy people. And,
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, it's corrupted the whole of the Congress. So, the fact that you can serve in Congress, leave Congress, and there's not even a waiting period. You immediately start working for a lobbying agency. You use all of those connections you made in service of the people to undermine the people by buying legislation, basically. So, and it's quasi-legal. I mean, you can't directly write a check and pay somebody, but there are ways around that. Junkets and trips and, there are ways around, and that obviously the being part of the body that makes the decisions that causes the market to fluctuate helps a lot of people. There's just, I think it should be illegal for them to trade in the stock market while they serve. I think that in order to serve, you want to serve, divest of all your stock, or put it in a trust that you can't access at all. You know, lock it down, no trades on your stock or divest until you're done with your service. Because I don't see how you do it otherwise. They can just give a speech and the market will react, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
And when you're betting on both sides, people short stocks, right? So they bet that a stock is going to go down. Well, if you can give a speech that you know is going to make a sector of the market crash, what's stopping you from just shorting that whole sector of the market and making a speech? And I think a lot of that is happening. So,
I agree. How did I get drug into this conversation is what I want to know.
Oh, snap. I'm sorry. Too political.
PJ says, come and watch me do a live stream.
I said, come and hang out.
Yeah.
We're just chilling. I actually think making travel between Canada and America would be cool. I like how some communist places like Burkina Faso are making travel with allied surrounding very simple. The EU is also cool. Yeah. A lot of insider trading. Give me a favor. I'll give you some information on the stock market. Yep. Cool to see a DFF episode on unions and feature Paul's dad in the episode. Whoa. Well, let's not get too crazy with it. The old man's nice enough to hang out and yak with us a little bit. He's not looking to be a YouTube star, so we have such interesting talks, and it's a lot of the stuff that I talk about here. You know, we were talking philosophy a little bit earlier, and you know, we've touched on politics a little bit, but mostly we've just talked about life and stuff like that. And I try and do that. I've been trying to separate myself a little bit from the political stuff. At least put it on the back burner a little. But I don't know.
I have to say the talks we have are healthy. We respect each other.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't get to name calling or anything like that. So I like that.
Well, it hasn't yet.
You do call me Pops, which I think is mildly disrespectful.
I'm sorry. What would you prefer? Dad?
King?
King?
Yeah.
King?
King Paul?
King Paul, okay. All right, I'll try, Pops. I'll try.
But I've really enjoyed my time here visiting Paul. But he's letting me use his guest room, and it's been great.
Yeah.
It feels like almost like coming home. I have to say, though, we have not lived under the same roof for many years. Has it been almost 30?
It's
been that long?
It's been, well, so it would have been 2003-ish when the last time you and I shared a roof for longer than a night. Yeah. And, so it's a little different, though, because, you know, well, I don't know. Maybe it isn't any different. I don't know. I don't know how it feels from your perspective. I was not worried about it, but I was nervous about it, just because I wanted you to be comfortable over here, and I wanted you to have a good time. And you know, I don't host people all that often. I'm kind of a hermit. I tend to go to folks, so I'm trying to break that. You know, like I said, we had Easter over here with Amelia's family, which was nice. But I was just worried, you know, I didn't want you to feel awkward or weird, because I'm very like, I may not have my mom's ability to do the party throwing and guest taken care of, but I'm very open with my home just that way, you know. So I'm glad you're having a good time, but give it time. You'll be sick of me, but when you leave.
Well, I think the big difference is it's your house and I'm visiting you. You know, back then you were living in my house, right?
True.
This is probably the first. Yeah, it is the first time that I spent time in your home.
Well, I think that this might be the time then for us to lay down some rules.
That's right.
There's going to be some chores. There's going to be some curfews. No pot smoking. Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, I could just see me on pot. I got to say, the dog I want to take this dog home. What's his name?
Dinor.
Dinor.
Or D. We just call him D most of the time. Dinor's when he's in trouble.
Oh,
It's like saying your full name when your mom says your full name.
Yeah. He's looking through the glass door at us, back and forth.
Yeah, you can come out.
What are they talking about in there?
Here, I'm gonna go get a drink real quick. I'll mute this so they don't. Okay, now they can hear. We're good. Sorry, we were passing secret information. Was giving him all of your credit card numbers as I skim them. And he's going to empty your bank accounts now. You're still muted? What? No, you're not. Don't troll me. Secret info is only for signal chats. Yeah, that's true. There could have been lip reading there. They could have read lips. They might know what we said. There are people that are crazy, dude. The internet, I don't know if you know this, Pops. The internet's got some wild people on it. Wild. I'm one of them.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah.
I'm one of those wild people. But I'm not as wild as some of them.
I think you have become different over time.
How so? In your
I
perceptions?
early on, I would watch your streaming and profanities, and it was a little much for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the last few times I've watched, it's just a conversation. I kind of like it. But yeah, you've changed over time. Maybe you've gotten old.
I've mellowed a lot. We talked a little bit about that. Meeting Amelia and her influence in my life, her being just a naturally soft-spoken and kind of calm, logical person, has done wonders for me. Because I'm kind of like a balloon. That's the analogy I use. And, it sounds a little codependent, but a balloon is best when you've got somebody to hold on to the string. You feel me? Does that make sense?
Balloons full of hot air, is that?
Yeah, it's trying to float away all the time.
Yeah, Amelia is good for you. A calming influence.
Yeah. Yeah, no, she's great. And of course the stream loves her too, because she imparts her wisdom. She is like, she's got, you know what she's the best at? She's got a mind like a steel trap for facts. She will remember stuff and she'll be able to summon it. She's great. So we'll be talking about something, guessing, and she'll just give us the numbers. It's awesome.
I have to say, maybe I used to be that way. But turning 70, older than dirt, I was really expecting this great amount of wisdom to suddenly come upon me.
Mm-hmm.
What a disappointment that has been. My goodness.
Do you understand how wise the statement you just said is? You basically just gave a modern version of Socrates. The only thing that I know is that I know nothing. That's great wisdom, Pops.
Oh, it was. Oh, okay.
You just don't see the wisdom, which is part of the wisdom. If you felt like think about regarding yourself as a wise sage, it would be weird. You don't see it, but I see it. I see the wisdom, Pops. You're wise. You know how I know you're wise? Because I'm like half your age. Well, a little less than half your age. And I'm wise.
But by the time you get 70, you'll be really wise, huh? Some kind of sage.
That's what I'm hoping for. Because I feel like my wisdom stat has increased. You remember Diablo when you would level up and you got your stats? My wisdom stat, I've been pumping it.
Well, let's hope you're not cheating on wisdom like you did Diablo.
Hey, if
Remember all those hacks we got?
if I find the program to cheat at life, you better believe I'm downloading it.
I'm gonna get God mode. I think
Yeah.
that's a good one. And
100%.
ultimately, matter of fact, I need some life. So yeah, some unlimited health. How's that?
There you go.
There you go. That'd be good. Be good. Yeah, those were good days, people.
Well,
Building computers together.
Well, you were a tech savvy guy for my generation. None of my friends had access to like computer stuff, let alone a parent that knew about it and could build it and wanted to play the video games and stuff too. That was wild. It's like there would be sometimes I would wake up at night and I would creep out to get on that thing and play some Diablo, and I would look around the corner and there you would be. I'd be like, oh man.
We were simpatico at that time in our lives.
Yeah.
That was great times. Great times.
Yeah. Remember we used to rent a lot of movies, a lot of horror flicks, and we'd just sit and watch movies. You remember that movie we watched, Dead Alive?
Is that the guy with the boomstick?
No, that's a different one. That's Evil Dead.
Evil Dead.
Dead Alive was crazy. It was that one that's
Zombie movie?
It's a zombie movie where the rat monkey bites that dude's mom, and slowly she turns into a mother and she kills the whole neighborhood.
There you go.
You don't remember that
I
one.
not only got wisdom at 70, I think I lost some of my memory.
Well, maybe that's part of wisdom, is knowing what is not worth remembering.
Yeah, I don't think I could use that in my life.
You don't think so?
Maybe I kind of put that in. Well,
There's the lawnmower scene. You don't even remember the lawnmower scene where he mows the zombies because they're all over the house, and he just gets the lawnmower and
I do not. I used to be a big fan of horror movies.
not no more.
Anymore, no. Matter of fact, I only go to the movies anymore when I take the grandkids. I've seen Minecraft 4 times.
Oh my god.
4 times.
Oh my god.
And some ridiculous movie called Sneakers about talking shoes.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, really
I didn't know that was even
real
a thing.
compelling, yeah.
Yeah, you're tuned in.
And then I went with the oldest grandchild and saw something called Warfare. And let me say, if you want to be depressed, go see that movie.
Warfare?
All about war, and it was about a SEAL team that gets pinned down, and there's guts and gore, and they don't even develop the characters. They just, destroy them.
Dang.
So I'm sure that's real, but does that make for a movie? It's supposed to be based on a true story. And at the end, they show some of the victims in wheelchairs or lost their legs and things. So,
Man,
so going from Minecraft to that was
it's a little bit of a culture shock. How do you feel about chicken jockey?
Were people throwing popcorn?
Did you get
Have-
popcorn sprinkled
every
on you?
time I was really disappointed that we didn't have any food fights in the theater because I'd read about it, but did not happen.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because my grandkids are homeschooled and we went during school hours, so
Oh,
there wasn't very many people in the theater.
I see.
There was that scolding that Jack Black did too, remember?
Jack Black started going to theaters, and he popped out in person. And he was like, "Hey there, chicken jockeys. Please don't throw popcorn."
That was, It had its moments, I say. I didn't hate that movie. A lot of action and good special effects.
So I've got a fact for you that blew my mind. The he sings a little song in it called Steve's Lava Chicken. Steve's Lava Chicken. It's a blah 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 blah. Right?
It's cha-cha-cha chicken, la 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 la.
Yeah, yeah. Cha 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 chicken. La 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 lava. Right. That is officially the shortest song in history to chart on the Billboard Top 100.
Gosh.
Lava Chicken is on the Billboard Top 100 at 15 seconds in length. What do you think about that? Do you weep for the future when you see a thing like Minecraft, or are you pretty tolerant of it?
I guess the kids liked it.
Well, of course
and here
they
I am,
did.
70 years old. I kind of liked it. It was
Yeah?
better than some of the other movies. It was better than Sneakers and better than Warfare. So can't complain.
Dang.
Can't complain.
Maybe I need to see this movie.
You would like it. You would like it. It had hilarious moments. Hilarious moments. Absurd and silly. If you're into that.
I do like absurd and silly. I'm a fan of absurd and silly.
It was every bit of that.
Well, that's good. I don't know if I can stomach it 3 times, though.
4.
4 times.
4 times.
That's Constitution right there. You must love your grandchildren.
Back at Christmas time, I had a run on Wicked. So I got to see that show 4 times.
Oh, man. Oh, man. Yeah, that's tough. See, I would have used that as a teaching moment. I would have took one of them to see the Minecraft. And when the next one wanted to go see the Minecraft, I would have been like, look, you have to pick anything else because life isn't fair. And they're going to hate it in the moment, but they'll remember that. You know what I mean?
You're a terrible granddad.
Well, I'm not one, so I can be as theoretically terrible granddad as I want.
What if Dinor wanted to go see a movie you'd already seen? Would you cut him off like that?
I mean,
all he'd have to do is give you the Google eyes, and you'd be taking him.
I mean,
and you talk big because you don't have any grandkids.
You're probably right. You're probably right about that. You called me out on my bullshit, okay?
I said before my flight yesterday, the kids, I had 3 in my lap wanting me to read them a book. And it's just like those moments in your life when you just feel so loved. And grandkids love you for no good reason. They're a lot like a dog in that way.
Yeah. They're a lot like a dog in a lot of ways, honestly. So they'll poop on the floor sometimes. They'll chew on things they're not supposed to.
There's a lot of
They'll
similarities.
yell really loud when they're not supposed to, you know. Yeah. The sacrifice. Yeah. That's a lot of because have you heard of the male loneliness epidemic? So men are having trouble finding mates these days.
Well, aren't there more women than men?
Yes.
But the women are so messed up? Is that the deal?
No. It's that men are having trouble being appealing to women these days. And so I think a lot of people would envy your life of having grandbabies and all of that, because I think there's a segment of men, a growing segment of younger men, who are starting to feel like that is unattainable for them. Not just economically, but even just the act of finding a woman that wants to settle down and is willing to choose them over, some dude she could meet on the internet.
I do think society has done a disservice to young women and encouraged them to go to college and not raise families. And by the time they get their career going, they find that they're no longer able to have children. It's so sad because it's so fulfilling.
Well, the women can have children and go to college.
It's a little tough juggling children. It wouldn't be something you would plan while you're in the middle of, finals trying to raise a kid.
No, probably not. You're right there. I mean, I don't know if because that's kind of goes against my whole women's lib hippie feminist kind of ideas. The idea that women ought to be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen and not learning. I think a woman can be a good scientist or a doctor just as good as a man one. What do you think women aren't as up to those types of jobs.
Well, I guess your sister's a good example. She was a school teacher
Yeah.
and then settled down and homeschooled her kids and got 7 of them.
Yeah.
She actually had 8, but one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess it can be done, but I think careers are not that important for women. And I guess I'm sounding kind of chauvinistic, but
A little bit, but it's
I
okay.
do.
I mean, it's your opinion.
Because I had children and look at all my beautiful grandchildren, I would really miss that if I hadn't had it.
I mean,
So,
Mom worked her butt off. I mean, I know she took some time off for me, but not very much for my sister, right?
yeah.
And you know, but see, the benefit of both of you working was, man, my childhood is like a dream. I tell stories about it all the time because, you know, like who had go-karts and who had a horse that wasn't rich. You know, we weren't like fabulously wealthy, but you know what I mean? And so like that comes into play too. If Mom hadn't have been working, there's no way you would have been able to hold up that whole lifestyle.
Yeah.
It would have been a different thing. Our childhood would have been a different thing, me and my
I have to
sisters.
say, her decision to go back to work instead of struggling financially
Mm-hmm.
was the beginning of the end for our marriage.
Well, because it caught, well, you guys worked rotating shifts, counter shifts
We
sometimes.
went on opposite shifts,
Mhm.
meaning I'd be on swing, she'd be on graveyard. We would literally take you out at midnight and make an exchange in the parking lot of the factory.
Yeah.
So that was tough on us as a family, and I think that's when she got to drinking a little more and found a friend, and
That was that.
ended up torpedoing our marriage. So
Yeah.
we probably should have if we'd have struggled for a few more years, I would have made management, and money wouldn't have been the issue. But
Mm.
in hindsight, I guess it was all meant to be.
Well, I mean, you're happy with where you're at now, right? With all the grandbabies and stuff. I mean, all the decisions you made led to that.
I have to say, when you get old, and I don't know how many 70-year-olds you got in.
There's a
the
couple of
audience.
oldsters that'll come through, but most of the people that are listening to us are probably in their 20s and early 30s, I would guess.
I think you and I've talked about some of the horrible things that's happened in my life, and PJ's been through them as well. When you're in the midst of them, it's hard to see any purpose in it or any good.
Mm-hmm.
But several of the things that have happened to me has made me who I am.
Yeah.
And now that I'm 70, I can look back on my life and I see it in a different light,
Mm-hmm.
from a different angle. So, as tough as my marriage was, and it failed miserably, I don't regret that marriage, that 20 years that I spent, because it gave me PJ, Paul's
Right.
ego, and his sister Mary Jo, and all them beautiful grandkids. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So if I had to go back and they said, "Hey, Paul, you're going to go through this hell, but the reward is that. What do you want to do?" I think I'd end up doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So there you go. I don't know if that's wisdom or just perspective.
See, you said you had no wisdom, and then you dropped some epic level wisdom on everybody. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
You have more wisdom than you give yourself credit for. You have enough wisdom to have humility. I haven't even gotten to that level yet. I'm at the full blown, I have every answer to everything, but I have no humility about it yet. I've yet to be humbled.
Well, yeah. I've been on my knees many times and just broken and had to climb out. So I guess when it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. There's some wisdom with that. It'd be nice to just learn from somebody else doing it.
Sure.
If you would look at my life and say, you know, Pops did that, didn't work out so well, I'm going to sidestep that one.
Sure.
But it never works that way, does it? It
Mm-mm.
seems like, you know,
I mean, we can't help but follow in the footsteps of our parents to a certain extent. Those of us that were lucky enough to have parents stuck around, for good or for bad, right? And, you know, you are not your parents, but the way that you were able to raise us was either you learned it from your parents or you learned what not to do from your parents. One way or the other, they gave it to you.
Yeah.
Right?
yeah, a lot of it was negative reinforcement kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I made a decision not to be a drunk, like my dad, or my mom was pure love, so I kind of clung to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to take the good and avoid the bad.
Yeah.
So maybe you're right there when you say we are, unfortunately, susceptible to drinking and stuff. So I went to therapy one time, and they told me, this is when you're raised in an abusive environment where a drunk or absent or abusive father, children often do one of two things. They either sympathize with it, empathize with it, and become it, or they turn away from it completely. And I think my father's behavior, I tried to do the opposite. So I loved my children, I was there for them, and he was never home. And he was out drinking, and it's a big hole in my life, and I didn't want that for my children. So it really broke me when we had the divorce, because I thought I failed.
Right.
I failed to keep my family together. It just was a pretty tough time in my life. Pretty
Yeah.
tough.
And it goes to what you were saying too, is like when that was going on, it felt like the end of the world. But now with all the perspective, you see what it led to, right? You see what your path became and what mom's path became, and how me and my sister worked out, and everything's all good. You know what I mean? So ultimately, maybe that happening was for the better. Maybe it needed to happen.
I think if age brings me anything, it's just to forgive, to move on. And
That's tough.
Not carry the burden,
Forgiveness is really hard. It can be really hard, right?
I've had it said to me so many times that hatred is like taking poison and expecting the other person to die. It only hurts yourself, and to carry that kind of thing, you need to forgive and move on. And I guess my life is more of a cautionary tale than an example. But for the longest time, I'm going to say it was almost 30 years. PJ knows this, that I kind of harbored a hatred for his mother because of the way she imploded our beautiful lives. I thought my world was perfect, and I foolishly thought it. And I've been able to move beyond that, and we sat down and had that conversation.
No, you guys are like.
And I have to say, it was kind of painful and ugly and tough and beautiful.
Well, because it was a long time coming, because you guys had us in common, so you couldn't, completely do away with each other, even though.
I did a really good job of shunning her.
Well, yeah. I mean, at a certain point, once your kids are grown, what's the point anymore?
I think one of the hilarious things about it, she says, Paul, after we kind of worked through it and all that pain and blubbered and cried our way through our conversation, she said, I knew that you probably didn't care that much for me, but I didn't think you hated me.
Like, man.
So, whoa.
I was lost in translation.
Which is a good example. It's a great example of you hate that person. Often that person doesn't even know you dislike them.
Right.
It's not hurting them at all. It only hurts you.
Right.
And keeping that secret or that pain, you think you've hidden it so well.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you that PJ, sitting right here, can say he knew that I had a problem with his mom. Mary Jo knew it. Even my grandkid says,
"Oh yeah,
well, are you and Mammy? Do you think if there would have been a way for you and Mammy to still be together?" And just broke me. You know what I mean? Little babies are so innocent, and they want all their people to love each other, and there not be that kind of hard feeling. One of them says, "Oh, Papa, we don't say that word hate. We say we don't like it very much, but that's not a good word."
Yeah.
Wisdom from a child, right?
Out of the mouths of babes.
So there you go. So
yeah.
And all that pain, and now having worked through it, I think there was purpose in that, and the timing was kind of good.
Yeah.
So here we are, and my life, not perfect, not beautiful.
Yeah.
But pretty darn good. At 70 years old, I can still walk and come visit my son.
Yeah.
3 states away,
Yeah.
and go visit my grandkids when I want. So I guess I shouldn't complain.
Well, yeah. That's a pretty good. That's a pretty good way of looking at it. I like that. I like that you've arrived at that place in your life. Yeah, and I'm glad we get to talk now. That's nice.
And I do like that PJ and I are kind of back together. We had a little out. I don't know if you talked to your
Yeah, yeah. I
group
told
about
you
that.
know I'm pretty
I
open.
want to say it was almost 7 years we didn't talk.
Yeah, it was close to that. Yeah. Yeah. I try and be careful of how much detail I give on deeply personal things. But as far as the overview of it, they knew that you and I were estranged for a long time. Didn't see eye to eye on things. Had a big blow up, and kind of from my perspective, why. At least how I was. I've told them about my divorce without giving too much detail. So there's not a whole lot about me that they don't know.
Well, in general, I have to think that you and I are alike too much in some ways. And we're hard-headed,
Mm-hmm.
quick to forgive. We kind of hold a grudge, and sometimes it's hard to turn loose of it. So I didn't want to break that, and you didn't. And what does it take, me getting cancer, for you to come and see me? And
Yeah.
in a way, can cancer be a blessing? Certainly. I can look back at it now and see it brought my daughter to visit me and my son.
Mm.
And I wake up in a hospital bed after being psychotic for about a week. And there's my son and my daughter. I thought, maybe I'm in heaven.
Yeah.
It was just one of those moments. So
Mm.
my life completely changed since then.
Yeah.
As old as I was, things can change.
Yeah.
There's still life to live, and I'm still here, so there must be a reason. So,
Well, from my perspective, looking at it, it's like, yeah, it sucks we didn't talk for so long. It's a lot of lost time. It's the one perspective you could give it, and it's certainly a true perspective, true enough. But from my perspective, also, I just think that, honestly, it was less about me and you, and from my perspective, it was about me. Like, in terms of I needed, right, to rebuild my life after blowing it up. I threw a grenade into my life, basically blew up my marriage. It kind of had all my friends turn on me as a result, and I had to figure that out. And I was, I stayed in contact with some people, other people I ain't talked to since. People I've known forever, ever. And you and I had a complicated relationship, as all people, I think, have with their fathers. I think all men have a pretty complex relationship with their dad. And it just kind of blew up in that moment. I think we were at cross purposes, and probably not listening very well to each other, and being hot-headed about it, and being judgmental both ways about it, is how I kind of remember it. And as a result of that, because what I built in that time, I think of it differently. In that moment, that time when I left my marriage and I really went wholeheartedly into this and started building my ability to have a career doing this. I needed to be ass out and alone. And if you talk to Mom, it wasn't just you I didn't talk to. I mean, Mom had contact with me. It wasn't the same thing. But I really just kind of, nobody really heard from me for a long time. And I needed it, and maybe that's selfish and maybe that's mean, but I think it was about that more than a whole lot of everything else. And then being reluctant once I had gone through the fire, like, because it really wasn't about becoming a podcaster. Like, that is incidental. It was about figuring out who I really am. And it was so hard to do that with, because everybody else's opinion and judgment and advice weighed heavily upon me. Mom's, sisters, old friends. Certainly dad's probably looms heaviest of all. So it wasn't like intentional, but our blow up is something, look, in my mind, it was the beginning of something that I had to do. I had to sever those ties to an extent, because I wasn't going to make it. I wasn't going to make the decisions that I felt I needed to make if I got drawn back, if I got talked out of, and so I look at it from that perspective. And so I have I don't regret that it happened, because it led us to a point where you and I can get together like this and talk like adults and be chill with one another, which is something we've had a hard time doing, in our past, especially once I got into my teens. I felt like you and we had great times together, but we butted heads a lot too.
Yeah.
And you said you think that's because we're maybe too much alike.
Yeah.
In what ways do you think? Well, other than just, being hard-headed, obviously. Just argumentative, maybe, or...
I think you're a very good debater. Better than me.
I don't know about that.
But we kind of have our beliefs and we stick up for them and try to battle in that way. I think our breakup, without getting into detail, I was in a bad place as well.
Sure.
In that it was during that time when I was kind of hating on my ex-wife and living with that pain, and what we talked about triggered that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I reacted inappropriately, and you came back with both barrels.
Oh, yeah.
I only hit you with one.
Yeah.
But you just took the rifle and beat me to death with it. And I had that, I think it was through a text message. I never had such a text.
It was an email.
It was colorful. It was email.
It was an email.
And holy moly, I read through that, and it just tore me apart as a dad. It just some things that I forgotten about that you remembered. You're like a woman. You can remember every little thing I ever did wrong. So it made me feel like such a bad dad, and I was just ashamed.
Well, that was the intent.
That was it. It worked.
That was the intent.
I don't know if the end result was what you wanted,
Well,
but us being away from each other for that long is a regret that I
would,
have.
yeah. And I was at a point there where, I was really at a low, you know what I mean? But also at a high, because, the low point is kind of like where you can see the high water mark from. And so I was really, because, a lot of what led to my divorce, I think, was cross purposes, right? I loved my ex-wife. She loved me. That was never the problem. The problem was she had a very, and look, it's shared by a lot of people, a very standard view of what she wanted out of life. She wanted to be married. She wanted to have kids. And she wanted to be a professional and have her job and have a little house. And look, that is a totally noble thing. And I think most people probably fall into that. When we figured out that we couldn't have kids, she kind of, I think it hit her different than it hit me. It's different for a mother to come to grips with that than or a prospective mother to come to grips with that. And it was my issue too, right? So it's me that I'm infertile, right? So, and there's really not a lot that they could do other than in vitro and all this crazy $30, $50, $70,000 things. And there's no guarantee that any of that works, right? And so it left her, I think, adrift and looking for purpose. And it left me, I hate to say it, but I'm just going to be honest, glad. Like, not glad, but excited. Because to me, it was like, okay, that door closed. But if I'm not going to have kids, that means I can travel. I can do things that parents have to sacrifice in order to have kids. And so my mind, that's how I guess I self-soothed myself through, because it was tough for me too. I genuinely wanted kids at the time. You know what I mean? To the extent that I could at that age. And I wasn't trying to have kids super early. We started trying when I was 27, right around when we got married. So, you know, it wasn't like a bad time in my life. I had a good, stable job, and so did she. And so it was, you know, but it just didn't work out that way. And I think that was probably what ultimately ended our marriage. Even though, you know, we were trying to both deal with it in our own ways. I think she went one way with it and dealt with it in one way, and I went another way with it. And that was just, they were purposes that were completely not aligned, you know? And so, but, you know, it's hard to know what the moment is or what, you know, what the main problem, because you've been through it too, right? Like, yeah, there was probably, you know, not to give any detail, but there was a triggering event that ended your marriage. But the problems underlying that event were deep and long and deep rooted and probably pretty complex. And it's the same way, right?
Yeah.
You want to look at one thing that did it, but if you really are honest about it, it's a lot of little things that did it.
Well, tell me, did you, when you realized you couldn't have children, did you get with your sister and say, Mary Jo, you have a bunch to make up? 'Cause I can't.
No, that was just a nice benefit. Because I got to tell you, of course, when that happened, when we found out that we weren't going to have kids, you don't go and just like announce that to everybody. We were kind of playing it close to our chests because we didn't want to talk about it. And of course, at that age, when you just got married, every time you see grandma, every time you see anybody, you know, sister, brother-in-law, when are we going to hear the pitter patter of little feet? You know, and it became tough. It became, and eventually I got to the point where I told her, I said, I just want to tell everybody. And so I did. And that stopped. But there was still, you know, oh, you in vitro, and we could help you out with that. And it's like, I don't need your help. It's just,
Well, tell me, everyone else wanted you to have children.
mm-hmm.
Did you want children?
At the time, before we did all the testing and I found out I couldn't and had to come to grips with that I couldn't.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest.
You
Yeah.
went for kids.
Yeah, I wanted kids. Yeah. You know, I was also 27 years old, right? And that's you know, it's hard to get in that headspace again. And it's hard to look at how my life went and say that I maybe was thinking right. I think I would have been okay at it. And I think my life might have went a different way if I had the kids. But, you know, like I said, it was, I think, simpler for me to unpack the feelings of that and to put my mind somewhere else than it was for her. I think that hit her in a different way. And like, yeah.
I think women see it as more of a purpose.
Yeah.
And when they get to an age where they can't have children anymore, it impacts them more.
Yeah. But once my sister had her first two, everybody was off my back.
Yeah.
And at 7, I mean, good Lord, she'd be stupid to ask me to have any now because she's got no time for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, mom was the biggest one. But it was everybody. We came from. It really is a cultural thing. It's like you start getting pressure from your family and your friends and your uncles and your aunts and your coworkers. Subtle but pretty tough pressure. Like, hey, it's time to settle down. When you gonna buy a house? When you gonna have a kid? Have you picked out names?
Well, I know your mom loved you very much. And
Well, I love my mom very much.
I'm not going to call you a mama's boy, but maybe a bit. But you were the firstborn, so automatically you get that.
And call that the scion.
But she, every time I see her, have you talked to PJ? Or if she's talked to you, she'll fill me in. I'll get a text message or whatever. Talk to PJ. He's doing this. He's doing that.
Yeah.
So I kind of, she is, I won't say obsessed, but she loves you very much and cares about you.
Oh, I love her
She
too.
would have spoiled your grandkids to death.
Oh, I know. I see how she is with my sister's kids, and so it's very much like it just, you know, it's a one of those things. Wasn't meant to be. Got no answers about it either, other than the likelihood is some sort of trauma when I was young. I fell down and hit my nuts on something and just damaged them while they were developing is the best they could give me. The most likely culprit. But they said it could just be entirely genetic. It could just be an anomaly. You know, it doesn't necessarily run in our family, as far as I know. So it's probably the former. But for me, knowing that I couldn't, the pain of that, the way I dealt with the pain of that was like, well, look at what I can now,
Yeah.
right? So I can't do that, and that sucks. But look at what I can.
Was that around the same time frame as your marriage failing and you finding out that you couldn't have children, or had that been going on?
No, there
for
were
a while?
years.
It
There
was
were
years
years
apart.
between that. Yeah.
So it wasn't a triggering moment.
No, but I mean, if they, that is, I think, ultimately where it started to unravel. I think, and become,
Well, it wasn't what she had pictured with you, I think.
or for herself, or for her life. Right? It was like a puzzle piece. She was very determined to have this very particular way. Right? And to her credit, she had it every way that she physically could. Right? And she didn't pick a husband that couldn't have children on purpose, but she made her way through college. She started doing the type of work that she always wanted to do, and then she wanted to become a partner at that work and become a business owner, and she did that. You know what I mean? And so, like, that was, she had all of that, but it was like there was this piece of the puzzle that she couldn't have, right? And
she is not remarried or anything, so she hasn't found anybody to fill that role.
I don't know, honestly. One of the things about her, and I try and honor it as best as I can, is she does not want to hear from me, doesn't want to, you know what I mean? And I respect that. It's not that we have, because we bumped into each other. She still lives in the same town my mom lives in. We see each other. It's not that we're not cordial. She just doesn't want to have like a powwow about what happened, and she's moved on, and so I don't get updates. I have to stop mom because she still talks to mom, and mom will try and give me updates, and I'm like, Mom, respect her. She wants to have a different, she doesn't want me following her life, and I don't really want her following mine, so let's just not. Didn't your sister kick you there a few times? Oh yeah, I mean, having nothing but sisters was brutal. Oh yeah, go ahead, Daddy. Yeah, having nothing but sisters was brutal. They were completely unaware of what testicles are, and they don't care. And then once they found out, they really were merciless. You'd think they'd be careful, but they were merciless. So yeah, I mean, I doubt it was one of their kicks, because I took some pretty. I was a real active, rough and tumble kind of kid, and so I probably, slipped on the monkey bars or some shit. What's going on? Remember when TJ tried to get you guys to make up live on the show? I'll tell Dad about that. I'll tell him about that. He'll get a kick out of that. Yeah, he'll get a kick out of that, because that was pretty funny. What an absurd show. Yeah, I'm glad that Dad's comfortable sitting down and talking with you guys. No pressure, but I knew it would be interesting for you guys to at least get to, because he's such an interesting guy. Yeah, we've been just jabber-jawing non-stop, dude. Non-stop since he got off the plane. I mean, me and him had just been blah, 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 blah. I guess we got time to catch up on, But he's such an interesting dude, and he's got such a cool perspective. I knew you guys would enjoy sitting and listening to him. You both do sound alike. Yeah, I knew you guys would hear the similarity there. And my dad is around my height. I'd say I maybe got an inch on the old man, so I'd put him at 6 feet, 6'1", something like that. He's a gangly, he's a big, tall, gangly guy too. But in way better shape than me, bastard. I hate that. seems pretty good mentally for 70. Doesn't sound 70. Yeah, no, I mean, he's doing really well. Yeah. Yeah, I think he overestimated, because I think when he's talked to me, he says he feels like his cognitive process has slowed down a little bit, and that's probably true given his age. But I think he overestimates to the extent, right? And it's probably hard for him because there's maybe some words he has trouble remembering, or maybe he has trouble remembering certain events. But as far as his ability to talk lucidly about a subject, I mean, he's one of the only person that'll have me sitting and shutting up, you know. Oh, you getting another drink there? It's a shame you two were estranged for each other for so long, way too much alike, and no one wanted to come to the table first. I mean, that's pretty much what it came down to, yeah. Both bullheaded and both hurt, you know, by our last interaction with each other. We both kind of slung a lot of venom at each other. And both had a kind of bad time in our lives, so we were maybe putting a little more of our life struggles into it than we would have otherwise, and it was ugly. And, you know, like we said, we're kind of grudge-bearing type of people. When we feel like we've been done genuinely wrong, it's hard for us to forgive and forget. And so, you know, one of them things, but... So anyway, yeah, and then I'm going to bury him out back here. So that's the plan so far. Got the duct tape and everything.
What
Anyway.
plans do you have for me?
Oh, nothing.
Duct tape.
Oh.
I was just telling him about the dungeon downstairs that I haven't showed you.
Oh, yeah, we haven't gone down there.
I haven't peeked out. You see my hovel of an office. Evening. Have I been missing out on a dad stream? Yeah, we've been jabbering away like a couple monkeys in a tree over here. I was telling him we pretty much ain't stopped yakking since you got off the plane. We're both that way too. We like talking. You know, that works out nice. I'm trying to think of commonalities, because they say we sound a lot alike. It's
Yeah.
tone of voice and cadence. We're about the same height. We put our hands up together and we got the same exact hands.
I'm better looking.
Well, I mean, you have the silver fox thing going on that's helping you out a whole lot. Okay, let's not overestimate the looks, okay, guy? You are in better shape, which pisses me off.
Hardly.
I mean, I don't know about that.
I'm old.
I mean, you're old, but you're in shape. You know? You're lean and you're muscular and you're wiry. You know? I'm blubbery, man. Look at me. Look at this.
Bear of a man. That's what you are, a bear of a man.
A bear, yeah.
So, have you shared your attitude story?
My attitude story. You go ahead and tell it. I don't think I
The
have.
story I told at your wedding?
Nope. I don't think I have shared my attitude story. This is one of your favorite stories from my childhood here.
Yeah.
I know the story, but I want you should tell it, because you're going to remember it way better than me.
PJ was little. I mean,
How little was I?
I want to say maybe 4.
Yeah.
He was a pretty little guy, but he was brilliant. He talked super early. And I want to say he was barely 1 year old and doing his ABCs. So I don't know where he got all those brains, but he was really smart. His mother had, she was working and I was working, and she had made chocolate chip cookies, and she left orders. No chocolate chip cookies until I get back. So there I am stuck with PJ, and he's giving me I want a cookie.
Yeah.
And I said, no, your mom said no, and he got mad. Oh, he was upset about them cookies.
Like, Mom
So
said no, but Mom's not here.
You can see a little guy with his hands on his hips, and finally I said, PJ, You need to go to your room until you change your attitude. Oh man, he stomped in a huff off to his bedroom, slammed the door, and he's quiet for a little bit. And pretty soon I start hearing all this bang, rustle, things being thrown around in his room. And I said, well, he's just kind of letting off some steam. I don't know. Finally, it didn't stop. So I finally go in there and open the door. And this little guy turns to me and tears are streaming down his face. And he says, I said, PJ, what are you doing? And he says, I would change my attitude if I could find it. So he tore that whole room apart looking for his attitude to change it. It was just way cute. And I shared that story at his wedding.
Yeah.
And my recollection of it was a little different than his mom's, but the essence of the story is there.
Yeah.
He was just so clever. But at that moment, he didn't know what attitude was about.
I guess he
thought it was a physical item.
Yeah,
Maybe
it was
some clothing.
Yeah.
I have to wonder, had you have found it, what it would have looked like.
Yeah. What was I thinking I was going to find in there is where I wish I could. I can't. See, I've heard the story, but I can't remember it, so it's a tough story for me to tell because I got no memory of it. So you being here is probably their only chance to hear one of them type of stories.
I don't know if PJ shared pictures of himself when he was little, but
Mm-hmm.
As little boys go, he was very handsome.
Mr. Petite, California.
And that story was, we took him to, some friends had their children in a beauty pageant, and we just took PJ along. And some people from behind saw PJ and said, you should enter him. He is so cute. And they even hustled up some clothes to put on him. He went on stage and ended up winning it, and we left there with a trophy. And often I think back of that. I say, what happened to Mr. Petite? This hairy bear of a man was such a cute little guy. So cute.
Now I'm a train wreck.
Yeah.
No.
But not so petite anymore.
No, I lost the petite. I like to think I kept the wit, but I think I might have lost a little bit of that too. I held on to as much as I could through my 20s, but 20s were rough.
You have to say your 20s were in Phoenix, right?
A lot of them. Well, the early 20s were there. And then I moved back to Fresno, and I was in the condo for almost 10 years. And then moved out of there in 2009 after buying a house in late 2008. So, yeah. I've been everywhere.
I have to say, PJ and I, if we were friends, we go way back. But my memories of him, there are just multiple moments in your life. I don't know if you have memory like me, but there's snapshots of something that was extraordinary or really heart moving. Or PJ was such a character. I remember as he was getting toward the end of high school, he had an audition at Fresno State that was extraordinary to me. I had been to all of his plays and seen him play all the different parts. But this was different. I guess he had to do a serious monologue and then contrast it with a funny one.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never seen you behave like that. It was like, when he did the first one, the room was silent. It just, he became the person. I don't know if you hear people sing sometimes. When you watch them sing, they become the song.
Mm-hmm.
And they emote the emotions, and you could see it in them. PJ became that role that he was playing. And I was so moved by that, it really shocked me when he just kind of paused briefly and switched to the different character. It was like a different person appeared on stage. And the contrast between those were extraordinary. And I was so proud to have witnessed that, because the son that I had for 18, 20 years, I had never seen that part of him. It was an amazing thing. For the way he played the role and became the role.
Yeah. That was the result of so much training. So that what you're talking about is the contrasting monologues portion, which ended up winning me my scholarship to Fresno State. Um, so yeah, I mean that was the result of so much deliberate training, and I was so focused back then because I just felt like I'd found my thing. And so, man, I worked that monologue like a.
See, it didn't look like something you worked at. It just looked like you're sitting here talking kind
Mm,
of thing. It just seemed so natural. And but the difference between those two characters, I don't know how you pulled yourself out of that first one to prepare for the second one. But you say that comes with practice.
yeah, yeah.
'Cause it was
It's
quite
so
a thing
I
to
was
see.
trained by my Ginger to be a method actor. So she was a Stanislavski method teacher, which teaches making yourself emotionally available to your character. And so finding analogs in your life, thinking about the emotional life of your character that doesn't appear in the play and filling in that gap and really putting yourself in that role. And so getting there is one thing, and then being able to contrast a monologue and get out of that and get into another one. That's why they have kids do that. That's why that's the final test to see whether you get a scholarship or not, is because it's one of the hardest things you can do in acting. Because it's emotionally draining to put yourself in a vulnerable place and then to snap out of it so quickly. It's just not naturally humanly thing. It's not something that human beings naturally do. And so it took a lot. That's just a lot of training, and it's still something. It's like if I was to claim expertise in anything, it would be theater, because I've done the most deliberate training in my life in that, and it's something I use all the time doing what I do. It's not all the same, I'm not playing a character most of the time.
I have to say the whole room was silent during the serious one. But when you flipped it, people were giggling. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you brought the audience. Maybe that's the extraordinary thing is the audience was there with you,
Mm-hmm.
and it was simply a stool and a spotlight and you in the middle, and the audience all around you. But you were just kind of alone.
Mm-hmm.
It was just one of those moments that I'll never forget. And my life with you is like that. Those some of them not so good moments, but some really extraordinary moments that'll always be with me.
Yeah. It's just funny because I barely remember that, you know what I mean? It was all such a whirlwind for me, and I had competition performed those contrasting so many times that it was just so rote. That's one of the ways I dealt with it, I think, is I didn't allow myself to get wrapped up in what it was before I did it. It was just another competition, just another competition, just another competition. Boom, 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 boom. I was in that mode at that point because we were, Ginger had us all over the state, um, at competition as much as she could wheedle the district into financing. And because we always brought home the bacon, we got a lot of financing. So,
Yeah, Shakespeare.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. That is one thing that I always liked is you always were interested in coming to the shows and stuff, which a lot of people's parents wouldn't even come to their stuff. It was kind of sad and pitiful. But
I
oh,
have to say that first time I went to LA with you to do that Shakespeare festival was a bit of a shock.
yeah,
You know, I'm a little square, and the the banter that was going around in the group was pretty filthy. The F word was thrown around quite a bit.
yeah, it was a bit salty.
And by the time I got to LA and the stressful drive we had there, remember we broke down
Mm-hmm.
and had to get a water pump or something fixed.
Mm-hmm.
So we were the last ones to get there, and I was exhausted after fighting traffic. And you guys were so noisy and so active, and I was not into it. When I got there, I told Ginger, I said, "You have to get somebody else to drive these kids home. I'm leaving." And she says, "Why don't you give it a little while?" She was so smart.
Yeah.
Because after I went and sat with you guys for a bit, and I just got drawn into it. It took me back to a childhood time,
Yeah.
and I ended up just really enjoying myself, and I'm so glad I did not leave
Yeah.
because that began a time when anything TJ did, I was up for.
Yeah.
And it wasn't contrived. It wasn't something I was faking to be a
No.
dad. I honestly enjoyed watching it.
Yeah.
So I was, from that point on, I was just drawn into it.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can fake that. Kids can tell the difference.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
But I was quite disappointed when you didn't become a famous actor or something. But what you're doing,
Me too, man. I
because
thought I
what
was
you're
going.
doing is not, to me, not acting. It's kind of real, being
Well, it's
real.
a little of both. So the thing I trained in that I use the most is improvisational training. So the ability to talk and be normal and then spin into a bit and spin out of a bit. I do a lot of character work on the main show. So I'll be playing, you know, these little characters I've invented, and I put a picture up on the screen, and everybody knows it's me, right? But the performance of it is funny, and I get funny things out of TJ and Scotty and reaction to it. And so that training, you know, I use that all the time, you know, and just the ability to kind of sit here, you know, although you know, you're doing great too. I'm just saying, like, for a lot of people, doing this is overwhelming, you know, like just knowing that there's, well, as of right now, 116 people listening in, right, gets to be overwhelming. And they would never want to do it. It's like, Mom, you know, I never force anybody because I never want to be responsible. But it's like, Mom wouldn't even. I think she would be a hoot. They would love. She would have so many crazy stories, and you know how ham boned she is. But she just was not interested at all. Afraid of what they'd say. Blah 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 blah. But you know, they don't. They're not. Our fans are cool. TJ and Scotty, their families, been on there with them a bunch of times, and it's always cool. You know, everybody's just. Pops is really a boomer. Yeah, he is. He's
A boomer.
He's actually a boomer though, a legit boomer. I get called boomer all the time, and I'm like, man, you got the wrong Paul.
Such a boomer.
Well, no. To young kids, anybody that's older than 25 is a boomer, so you know how it is. We're all boomers.
Well, I have to say, most of the family, certainly his mom loves him to death, but I've always been a fan of PJ's, and it's interesting to see that other people are fans as well.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of cool that people want to hear you talk.
Yeah, I do too. I can't figure it out, but I don't argue with it. You know what I mean? I don't quite have it figured out either. I don't know why they show up, but I don't argue with them about it. I think they make a fine decision to show up.
Oh, is that true? The modesty, I think, what draws them in. You know.
Yes, I radiate modesty. They'll tell you. One of the most humble, unassuming people they've ever met in their lives. Yeah, I remember telling you about me and Scotty getting into that rumble, that little verbal exchange.
I remember that.
And you asked me about it yesterday and asked if we were okay. Yeah, we're fine. You know, Scotty, the thing about Scotty is he was raised with TJ, and that really, like, it's brothers, right? I never had brothers. And so I don't know what that dynamic is. You had a bunch of brothers, so you kind of know what that dynamic is. And that is just so, I mean, they will threaten to kill each other.
Yeah.
Right in each other's faces. They will attack each other, but not like to, it never goes to the point where one of them really gets hurt, but they will tussle and beat on each other, and it's just, that energy to me is, I never had, because I was around girls, you know what I mean? So it was always like, you're not allowed to hit your siblings. Nobody ever told me, go work it out with your sisters, you know, go punch them a couple times. But I guess that's how boys are, you know, raised, and I never got that. And so I'm real avoidant when it comes to fighting and stuff. So that energy is tough for me, man. And I think it's that Scotty came at me like that is actually a reflection of the fact that, you know, Scotty to an extent trusts me and considers me to be a friend and stuff, because Scotty's definitely the type of guy that doesn't have a second for a person that doesn't matter to him. You know what I mean? Like, if he wouldn't even bother arguing with me about it if I didn't mean something to him. You know, so ultimately it's just a bro thing.
I was a big proponent of a celebrity death match.
Yeah, you wanted to see us like set up a boxing match
Put
to
the
settle
gloves
it.
on and go at it.
Oh man, I actually still think that's a brilliant idea. It's just that the heat has cooled down. We didn't fan the flames properly.
Well, you guys could get together and do a little presser and smack talk a little, and one
Oh, yeah.
guy jump at the other and kind of draw the
Hold me
audience
back,
in.
man. Hold me back, man.
Yeah.
Let's do it now, bro. Yeah, we could drum it up.
I think it'd be hilarious.
Yeah, I thought it would be funny to like hype it up and then show up in them big giant boxing gloves, the big
Yeah.
inflatable ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
I'm just gonna go pee real quick. Let me mute. Bloop. Tell them about TJ trying to get you guys to make up. Oh yeah, I don't know if did I ever tell you that story.
No.
So TJ devised this board game, and it was like Chutes and Ladders. If you ever played that, where you can go certain spaces and there's shortcuts, and if you get it, you can skip a little of the track. So he designed this whole diabolical game, right? And TJ gets real meticulous about this stuff. So it was like a board game quality board game. But the rules are twisted, right? So it's a drinking game. This was years and years ago, right around when Amelia and I first got together, actually. She had, I think, been in town, what, babe, 5 days, 4 days, something like that, right? And I had this big show, and I kind of told her we're going to be drinking, so I'm going to be drunk, but I don't think I could have prepared her. Oh, yeah, sorry, babe. And so this board game is going on, and every time you land on a square, TJ draws a card, and it's got a stunt on it that involves drinking, right?
Well, it's kind of like dare or drink, basically.
Well, that's what it came to a few big times for me.
Yeah.
So Dad, I should have went to Vegas. I had the luckiest game. So TJ was pissed because he had designed this game to be this long, torturous. He was hoping we would tap out.
Or something. Yeah.
And I perfect rolled that board. I couldn't have rolled better. I hit every bonus, every shortcut, and it's like less than an hour into the game. Now, I was drunk as a skunk by then because I'd had to do shots and do this, and he'd ask a question, and if you get it wrong, you got to drink a beer. And so I was pretty gone. So we get towards the end, and that's where he put all the hardest ones. So I'm about to win, and he goes, "Oh, you got to spin here. Hold on, I got to spin the wheel. You know, he had this app on his phone with we didn't get to see what the punishments were, and it landed on one, and he started laughing, and he's like, "All right, if you want to keep moving up in the game, you have to drink 6 shots of vodka." And I was like, vodka. I was drunk. There was, dude, I would have been calling you at like midnight. Dad, listen to me. I need to make up with you or something. It wouldn't have worked. So it was basically a no-win. The other one that I rolled was drink 6 shots of vodka or call your mother right now and explain to her that you are a furry. And you have to be completely serious about it.
She would have understood.
I know. That's what I kind of told him, but I was like, I also don't want to do that. I don't want to have to explain that to my mother. It's better she doesn't know. Now she probably knows. Everybody knows about furries now. But yeah, no, that was a funny one.
Fox News. Fox News is educating people about all the furries.
Yeah. So yeah, TJ put it in there to be evil, but it ended up, being funny for the show because I was just like, it's so evil to put it there after I would already be wasted. Mm-hmm. If I would have rolled it first, I might have been like, whatever.
So you played the game on the air?
Yeah, live in front of everybody, and it was crazy.
Back and find that.
Oh no, don't!
Yeah.
It's absurd.
And he was completely out of it. I think he stayed like 3 hours after the show ended to recover, so you could stop puking.
I usually I've got an iron constitute, but I drink so much too much, so fast.
You didn't have a drop of water either.
No.
Like, he had gotten you guys water to try to be like a little reasonable, and you didn't.
It was bleh, so I puked a bunch, and I couldn't go anywhere while it was hurling. And then once I got that calmed down, I was still just beyond gone. And they took me home to her, and she'd never even seen me drunk before, and they pour me in the door, I'm sorry, baby.
Stevie and Scotty lifting you up on the other side.
Yeah, I had to be helped. So that was not a good look.
And then you apologized to Cricket,
the
cat.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Cricket. I'm so sorry, man.
Promise I'm not like this all the time.
I don't do this all the time, Cricket, I swear. It was an insane game, but you're evil Uncle TJ. I'm sorry, Cricket. But that was when I put my foot down and I was like, no more drinking challenges. That's it, I'm retired. And we haven't done one since. I refuse. And only because I can't feel good like I used to be able to feel when I was in my 20s when I get drunk like that. When I was in my 20s, I used to binge drink, maybe not to that extent, but I'd get wasted and I'd be up in the morning ready to work. You got an infinite well of energy at that age, or at least I remember having it. Not no more. That's all gone. It's all fled me. That game really brought out TJ's creative side. Yeah, his sadistic creative side. But yeah, no, it was a fun game, but he was pissed that it took me less than an hour to beat it. And I rolled dead perfect.
Yeah, he'd run simulations and didn't see that possibility.
Yeah, he actually went back and looked, and he said it was something. It was like 1 in a million or 1 in over a million that I rolled as well as I did through half of the board. So it was just an absurd streak of luck on the dice. And I wish I would have gotten paid with anything other than a giant hangover and a bunch of regretful behavior. You know what I mean? That would have been great. But
you won the dark liquid from the red sarcophagus, or the red liquid from the dark sarcophagus.
you know what that was? Tabasco sauce with a bunch of pepper in it. It was another disgusting TJ reward. It was horrible. But, it was funny. Apparently. So that worked out. Did you ever see The Wheel of Torture, Dad?
Is that a game?
Yeah, it's a game show. Another TJ game show. Back on my old show, Drunken Peasants, when I first started all this nonsense. TJ did a game show where there was a dominatrix that came. So, you know, like bustier and leather and whips and chains and handcuffs and such. And it was a trivia game where if you gave a wrong answer, you lost points and you had to spin the wheel of torture. And on there were various beatings and implements from the dominatrix. And I won that game, Pops, with flying colors. I absolutely destroyed it. I had 12 clothespins on each nipple at the end. It was horrible. I had been spanked. I had been whipped. I had been beaten with a big paddle. My butt, I wish I'd saved the picture, but it's out there somewhere. I took a picture of my hamburger of a butt at the end of it, and it was just purple. But you know what? I won $4,000. So.
That much?
Yeah.
Wow.
People said it was a setup because I used that money to move out of Texas to Bellevue, where the show was at the time. And there were people that claimed that it was a setup, but I won it fair and square. The other two guys weren't affiliated with the show.
Are you sure you didn't like it just a little?
The lady was hot. Her name was Mistress Jen. And she was really nice too. She was super duper nice. Her name was Mistress Jen. And yeah, I mean, some of it was kind of all right, I guess. You ever take a paddling?
I used to get whipped a lot when I was little, but not as an
Nah, okay. Never got an adult paddling? All right.
I have to say, was she as thorough a spanker as I was?
No. Well, I mean, she was more thorough in that she had more implements than you used. But she was definitely not as practiced a hand as you were. So, so no. She could have taken some pointers from you. There was at one point where TJ got tired of watching her spank me with this big paddle because she wasn't doing it the way he wanted it done, and TJ's a behemoth. If you ever meet TJ, it's kind of crazy. As a guy that's our height, it's kind of rare to bump into somebody and to know somebody that like towers over you. But TJ's huge. And TJ grabbed that paddle, and when he hit me with it, I kind of understood at that point. Because up until that point, I was like, why do people torture themselves like this? But when TJ did it and put all that force and energy behind it, it like reset my brain for a second. It was like, boom. And I was like, oh, okay. Now I see why people are doing this. Now I get it. But, yeah.
What about when the last time I ever spanked you and Mary Jo? That story. Do you remember that? Let me share it.
Okay.
PJ and Mary Jo were little and picking at each other and wouldn't stop. So I sent them both to their rooms for a spanking.
Mm-hmm.
And my spanking routine was take the belt off, snap it a few times, get the fear factor going, and then a few swats. And PJ was first, and
Always.
we didn't drop the draws, but we got a pretty good spanking. And then I started heading for Mary Jo's room, and PJ says, "Don't do it, Daddy. Don't hurt Mary Jo.
Oh.
Spank me instead." I was so, oh gosh, that ruined it. I never even went into Mary Jo's room. That was the last time I ever spanked the kids. Just broke my heart.
Pwned.
So about a year ago, I was recounting that story to Mary Jo, and she says, "Oh, me and PJ so played you. We had planned that." I said, "Ooh, you guys, wow." Here it is 30 years later, and I'm finding out it was all a deal.
It worked,
It
man.
flat worked, because it just took all the fun out of spanking.
Fun and spanking. Beat the heck out of Repsian and Pimp. Yes, I did. Yeah, the two guys I fought against. One was named Mr. Repsian, and one was named Pimp Monk. Dude, there was a moment from that, Daddy, Because if you if you took a punishment, you couldn't take it, you tapped out, you lost. You were out of the game. So it was me and two other dudes. And one of them was this big fat guy named Pimp Monk. And he's a southern guy, talks with a deep southern accent, and smoked a lot. So big fat guy too. So his voice, I do a real good Pimp Monk. It sounded exactly like this. I'm gonna go downstairs and smoke a cigarette. You wanna come with me? So that's exactly Pimp Monk, right? And so the whole idea is if you can't go through the torture, you got to quit. And so one of the things he rolled was he had to put on, you ever seen a GIMP mask? Though you've
Which kind of mask?
a GIMP mask. So like the leather with the zipper and the kinky mask, right? Okay. You had to wear that for 10 minutes or something. So he squeezes it on his big old watermelon of a head, right? And we're sitting there, and Repsian is answering something. He taps me. Pimp Monk does. He taps me on the shoulder. Pause ego. Pause ego. I'm like, what, dude? He goes, I can't hardly breathe in this thing. I think I need it. And I was like, and I looked at him and I said, take it off. Take it off, Pimp Monk. And he got it. I was like, it's a torture, man. It's not supposed to be pleasant.
Well, did he take it off?
No, he sucked it.
He gutted it out.
He gutted it out.
Turned purple? And...
No, he wasn't dying. He just was uncomfortable on his head. And he was trying to wuss out of it. I told him. Tell your dad he looks a little like Dusty Rhodes.
Who's Dusty Rhodes?
A wrestler. Look him up. Let's see if there's any validity to this.
Dusty Rhodes coming up.
Dusty Rhodes is Rhoades. So it's not like Rhodes, you know. Dusty Rhodes. But yeah, I remember seeing him when I'd go see wrestling. What do you think?
He died 10 years ago. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was older than you. He was way older.
Not by much.
Yeah.
Well, you know how wrestlers
must have been all those Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
Wrestlers don't tend to go.
There's no way
long.
I look like that guy.
Let me see this. I'll be the judge of that. No, that's not Dusty. That's Dustin Rhodes. That's his son.
Oh.
Yeah, you got to find Dusty.
Sorry.
Yeah, Dustin Rhodes is his son who still wrestles. Yeah, I'll agree. You don't look like that guy.
D-S-T-Y.
He pulled up Dustin Rhodes.
It keeps spell checking it. How do you spell Dusty?
D-U-S-T-Y.
And then I do the search. There it is.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I don't even know what to think of that. Please. Now I am embarrassed. Look at this.
Okay, well that's pretty bodacious right there.
A pig.
He wasn't a pig.
He's a real squealer. What's up with the stuff he wore? Oh my gosh.
I mean, he was a wrestler, so he had his whole gimmick. Oh yeah, the polka dots. I think you might.
Bathing suit.
I think you would have at one time in your life. I think you would have filled that bathing suit out just as good as he did. I think you would have looked smashing.
I don't know if I would fill that big, but yeah, I would have filled that bathing suit out.
Oh. Tell your dad he looks. Oh, they weren't saying you look like Dusty Rhodes. They were saying Pimp Monk looks like Dusty Rhodes.
Thank you for that.
Okay, they corrected me.
Thought I was gonna have to go to therapy.
Man, dodged a bullet on that one.
Yeah.
The American Dream was his moniker. Yeah, Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream. Yeah, there you go. Could have done worse. I don't know what wrestler we look like. I don't think we look like any of the old wrestlers. Maybe like
Hulk Hogan.
I kind of look like
Butterbean.
Who was that dude?
You're just a hairy Butterbean.
The guy that had the Butterbean. Yeah. If I shaved up, I would look like Butterbean, bro. Not even kidding. Who was that guy? Hillbilly Jim? No, but kind of looked like him too.
Haystack Calhoun?
Haystack Calhoun kind of looked like him. Who's the one I'm thinking of? He had the 2x4. Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Oh, gosh.
That's what I'm rocking right now. I look like Hacksaw Jim Duggan that let himself go. Mick Foley. That's, kind of Mick Foley-ish too. He was hairy and fat. Yeah. I like wrestling. You know, Grandpa would take me wrestling to like see the WWF.
Yeah, yeah, he was a believer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's a believer.
And so
he took all his kids when
he-
we were little.
I don't think he realized it, but like because he loved going to see the wrestling because I loved it so much too, I got to see some of that golden age stuff in the 80s. I got to see a lot of the golden age wrestlers. So I got to see Dusty Rhodes, I got to see Hacksaw Jim Duggan, I got to see Hulk Hogan and Rowdy Roddy Piper and The Undertaker and all these big names, right, when they were new and young and just doing it. And that was so much fun back then, man. I had such a amazing good time at them wrestling meets. I was so into that. I just remember being super into that. Macho Man. Yeah, I got to see Macho Man. I got to see some really old ones too. My favorite when I was a kid was George the Animal Steel. That was my granddad's favorite too. He was a big fat weirdo in a one piece like that Dusty Rhodes, but just a black one. Bald, ugly as all get out. And his gimmick was he had a purple tongue and he'd stick it out at everybody. Blah. And then when he got mad, he'd go over to the turnbuckle and he'd rip it up with his teeth. He'd eat it. He was feral. When they tried to interview him, he would just grunt, you know, he'd just, ugh. But it's funny too, when you look at actual like interviews with the guy, he's super duper articulate, normal guy, sounds really normal and nice, but you know, that's why I liked wrestling, I think, because it's a character, it's acting.
I have to say, I'm ashamed to say I knew it was fake, but Dad took all his kids, and I thought this is going to be so boring. But by the time I left there, I had no voice left. We screamed and told him what to do, stand up, shake our fists, and hit him again.
Yeah.
And you just get so drawn into it, even though you know your mind knows it's fake. But it was just an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
I just had a lot of fun with that. You know what? Here's something we could talk about that's a little bit of a touchy subject these days. Indian guides and princesses. When I tell people about Indian guides and princesses, which is such a good memory for me, I got no problem. I had so much fun doing that. But when I tell them what it was, which is a bunch of white people putting on feathered headdresses and beating drums and
cultural appropriation.
I mean, yeah, it definitely doesn't.
Of that,
yeah, you know, these days that's frowned upon, but it was totally normal coming up.
Oh, ho ho, me walk.
Yeah. Yeah, and you remember like when we would taunt the Sioux, we would what would we say to them? Because they were whiners. Sioux.
Yeah, I was the medicine man.
I've told them that. That is the wildest story.
Magic fire.
Do you have any idea how? Think about. Have you ever gone through your mind and been like, "What if you were watching that from the outside?" And he had to describe it. So here's. I'll try. A man and his son, a white man and his son from the modern era, put on feathered headdresses, beads, and Indian garb, paint their faces up, get on a canoe that is rowed across a placid lake at night to a hushed crowd who regard them as holy men, all of them white, pretty much, with their faces painted, wearing their feather headdresses. One of them speaks and gives a big flourish, waves his hand, and the fire starts of its own accord.
Chemical fire.
Yeah.
That was awesome, man.
It was so cool. It was so surreal.
One of those moments. Do you remember the great Kichi Manitou? That it was kind of a rite of passage. You had to be brave enough to go to this brushy area. And in there, they had a guy dressed like a Sasquatch.
Yeah.
Or some kind of evil beast.
It was just his hand. He
would reach out, and you had to be brave and
you had to touch his hand.
Call out the Kichi Manitou.
Yeah.
I don't even know where that came from.
Dude, that was wild.
Those were great times with you, and Mary Jo was involved in that as well.
Yeah, the whole family was. We would all, and like, we would go to these huge, you remember we'd go to the Selland Arena.
Yeah.
And
they
it would
have
be
actual Indians get up and do a dance.
they
right?
would, but like it would be full of white people dressed like Indians, beating
Yelling
Indian
and beating a
drums,
drum and
hooping and hollering,
making
and
fun of the other ones. Yeah,
yeah,
it was pretty awesome. That
and
was good it was good for fathers to bond with their children.
you remember when I won the fishing contest with my Snoopy
I don't
fishing
know how you
pole?
did that.
Remember?
That you
I'm a
threw
player.
that. You barely got the hook in the water. You must have hit the thing on the head,
Mm-hmm.
and it just slurped it up. That was a huge fish. It was like 12 pounds. Was it that big? 12?
It was
It was big.
big
A
bass.
big mouth bass.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah,
I ended
that's
up winning
awesome.
the fishing contest that year, and then I won the frog contest one year as well.
Oh, we were good at catching them.
We used to get them frogs, man, and we knew where to find the big ones too.
Spotlight them with the flashlight,
Mhm.
sneak up on them.
Yep.
We had so many of them, we were giving them out to kids that couldn't find them.
Yep.
Yeah. God, it was great times.
No, it was good.
That was back when my life was perfect.
You felt like your life was perfect
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah, it was. I thought I had the world by the tail, and it wasn't long after that that it all kind of went aside. But at that moment in my life, couldn't have been happier. Yeah.
I remember it being a pretty idyllic time, but I was young, and so my memories of it are not. I have super strong memories of certain things, but the overarching, like going up there, coming back from it, all of that's gone with the wind. Where it was exactly, I can't remember where we were going. Was it Shaver Lake? Was it Bass Lake? Was it? I can't remember.
I can't remember the name of the lake. Is up toward the Sequoias.
Yeah. I just remember it was a trip. It was a hike to get up there every year for the big powwow, is what they called it, right? Where
Yep.
all the tribes would come. And yeah, it's just interesting to me that culturally speaking, the fact that was fun bonding for us and for my sister and mom too. They all, we all, like I said, the whole family was doing it. And it let us meet other people too, right? So like we made friends and stuff like that through it. It was all good fun, but probably like deeply offensive to some people. You know what I mean? Like maybe some Indian people don't have a problem with it, but I imagine it wouldn't be hard today to find somebody that would have a problem, with a bunch of white folks dressed up like some other culture. Right?
Yeah. I saw a thing on YouTube, and probably most of you guys have seen it. A guy wearing a Mexican sombrero,
Mm-hmm.
and he interviewed some white people and says, "Do you think this is cultural, inappropriate?
Yeah.
You think this is insulting? And, oh yeah, you shouldn't wear that." Then he went and found a group of Mexican people, and they thought it was hilarious and thought it honored.
Sure.
So the actual people, I think Indians would have looked at it and thought they're honoring us by imitating. Imitation,
Sure.
serious form of flattery.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, maybe so.
We were imitating them.
Yeah, I know that some of the people that are still, they live on these tribal lands and they have that connection to this tribe and stuff. They'll look at stuff like that and they'll think that we're turning something that is like
Sacred?
a deeply sacred cultural tradition into a fun family outing, right? And that if we were to like all dress up like the Pope and run around, Catholics would probably be bent out of shape. I don't feel any kind of guilt for having done it, nor do I think you should for having put us in it, because it just culturally wasn't even on the radar at that point as inappropriate, I don't think. I didn't feel it was. I never ran into anything like that, but nowadays, that program still exists, but I looked at it and they don't do the same stuff.
Not
they
near
used
as
to
much
do.
fun, right?
No.
We know how to do it.
Yeah.
I remember it was mildly insulting to the dad. Self-deprecation was a big part of it.
Was it?
The kids would really get tickled. Remember that one game called Eagle Beak? Had that piece of paper with a hole cut in the center and the drawing of an eagle, and the kids would have to cover their eyes, and we'd line the dads up behind it, and each of us would put our nose through that hole in the paper.
Oh, we had to pick
it
who's
was the
dad.
Eagle Beak, and tried to guess which dad it was.
Yeah.
And That kind of thing. The kids loved that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, it was fun.
And we loved it as parents. It was a great time together with the kids. And it was kind of geared toward fathers and their children, not the mother, although your mom participated to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
It was mainly focused on father's time with the children.
Right.
It was a perfect thing for that. So I don't regret that at all. And I don't think back then anybody thought it was, cultural appropriation.
No, it definitely.
That's kind of a new thing we've come up with.
Oh,
Being a boomer.
sure. Yeah.
We didn't worry about stuff like that.
That's true. And a lot of times I think people over worry, like you said. There was a big push against women that weren't Indian wearing those, they call it bindi, the little jewel in the middle of your forehead. And people in India
complained about that?
No.
Oh, they don't care.
When you go there, they can't wait to share that with you. They love it when you come there and you buy their clothing and you wear they love sharing. So a lot of times I think it's almost stifles culture to keep people from sharing it.
And dreadlocks is another thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, dreadlock. Nobody can really claim ownership of dreadlocks. Let's be real. Back before there were hair salons,
Vikings.
Vikings would have had dreadlocks, and black people in Africa would have had dreadlocks. And I don't think anybody invented the dreadlock. Okay, I think the dreadlock is a thing that human hair does. But yeah, no, I don't think you should get on anybody for having dreadlocks. I think that's stupid. I think it's carried too far. But I wonder if there is a line at which, maybe Indian Guides is that, or was that. Maybe it is a little much to, create a thing to get together with fathers and sons and daughters, which is fine. But to do it by taking what are deeply important and sacred religious things to a whole group of marginalized people, right, and making that the fun, play acting that, right? It probably wouldn't come off good the other way. I can kind of see that. I don't know. Do you think that you can at least empathize with that being over the line for somebody that grew up on the res? And
yeah, I do think what we've done with the American Indian is sad.
Yeah.
And I think we destroyed their culture.
Mm-hmm.
In the way we dealt with them, and by giving them that land and all that, and they didn't need to assimilate. They could have continued to do what they were doing, but we kind of forced them into our lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I can see them being resentful of that, but I don't think they saw Indian Guides as something that was insulting to them. Certainly wasn't our intent.
No,
we were just loving our kids. So
yeah. If anything, there was some level of appreciation about it because we did learn real things about the tribes of Indians that were native to the area we grew up in.
Yeah, the Miwok Indians was our tribe.
Yep.
And it was certainly a local tribe.
Yep. And so, we learned stuff about, there was a certain amount of reverence in that we learned a lot about American Indian tradition by doing some of the things that they did and going through some of the ceremonies they did. And so there's that angle as well, huh? It's like part of how you share culture is by inviting other people to take it and make it their own in a certain way.
I can remember distinctly there was like a field trip for the group, and we went toward Yosemite, and on the way up to Yosemite there was a kind of a trading post kind of thing, and there was an old Indian woman in there. And she was just kind of talking wisdom or Indian wisdom, and she got this really sad look on her face and said, the white man is trying to destroy my culture and who I am. It says, long ago they conquered our lands and put us on reservations, and we thought this would end us, and then they brought us disease, and it destroyed more of us, and then finally I think the last thing that will destroy my culture is the casinos, the greed, how they big business came in and utilized that as a tax-free property and build a casino and exploit them, and the money that they pay the Indians, the stipend they give them, kind of takes away all their initiative.
Well, their tribal structure is a microcosm of the American economy. It's like it's 5 people in the tribe that have all the money and everybody else is dirt poor. And we're talking beyond dirt poor.
And if you go to one of those casinos that is based, some of them even put the the tribe's name on them.
There are millions of
There's
dollars
no
coming through
Indians working there.
there. Yeah, they
And
hire
that
outside the
was
tribe.
kind of the idea. They were going to be, dealing or checking the slot machines, but none of them work there.
Yeah.
Because they get a stipend from it, and so it was just a failed thing. But it took away their initiative to continue their culture.
There was no way that they were continuing their culture with ours growing the way it was anyway, right? It was inevitable that one of us had to win that, and they lost it. It's tragic and it's sad, but there's nothing that we can do to undo it, and there's very little we can do to preserve what's left of it. Because at this point, the idea of going back to plains filled with buffalo and living off the land and all of that stuff is just a dream. And there was no way they would be able to continue that. America had that manifest destiny idea where it's like, even the land that we gave to them that we thought we weren't going to want, we came for most of it. And when we need it now, even to this day, we're like, well, we're taking this strip because we want to build a pipe through it. And they'll try and stop us. They'll show up. But we'll roll in the tanks if we have to, and roll in the soldiers. We've deployed the military against American Indians, I think 5 times since the 90s, trying to just protest them building a pipeline or a gas line through their land. They got no autonomy over the land, so we didn't really give it to them. We leased it to them. And slowly but surely, they're just dying out, man. There's not going to be any more. A few more generations of people, and it's going to be very rare to run into somebody who's recognizably Indian. Which, American Indian, Native American, I guess, is what they would prefer. But, yeah, it's just interesting to me. I know, not to bring her up, but your wife is really into Indian stuff. I remember growing up, she always had stuff that she had collected, artwork and stuff like that. And she gave me a book to read that I really ended up liking called Sacagawea. It's like that thick, man. It's a monster book. But I ended up reading the whole thing because it's just a great book. But yeah.
Yeah, we spent time in South Dakota. The Lakota Indians were there, and Custer was more over toward Yellowstone National Park.
Mm-hmm.
Custer's Last Stand. But there's a town there that we did that work camping in. It was called Custer, and she really was in her element there. She really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And they do have the Indian dances, but it's odd that they really don't have a written language. So that's part of why they're going to lose their culture, because it's kind of phonically almost impossible to spell out, but nobody's bothered to put it together. So
well, some of that was preserved in World War II by the code talkers. So Navajo code talkers, and eventually, obviously, all those things were declassified, but part of those classified documents were direct translations of the Navajo language, which, in a lot of ways was the first complete preservation of that language.
Also spoke to how difficult that language is to learn and understand.
Oh, it's absurdly hard. It's one of the hardest languages to learn.
Repetitive or anything that you can.
Well, it's not connected. So they call languages so Semitic. You've heard that term, Semitic languages. Languages that are based in old Hebrew. And that is Arabic, that is all of the European languages, English included, right? So you think about a language with no Semitic basis. So Chinese, incredibly hard to learn for a Western person, right? Japanese, similarly hard, right? Not necessarily because they're unintuitive, but because sentences are put together differently and different rules apply, and it's hard to learn one way and then learn that way. When the best way to do that is when they're babies, when they're kids.
Yeah.
Like when you're, little as you think you want to, you start teaching your kid 2 languages and they'll learn them both. They'll be fluent. It's kind of crazy. I know that my sister's kids, a lot of them are, speak multiple languages.
Spanish fluently. Yep. I think that's a real plus. Certainly would help you get a job.
Yeah.
Bilingual.
English is Indo-European, not Semitic. My bad.
European people speak 3 or 4 languages.
Yeah.
So they're surprised when they come here and find out most of us can only speak English.
Yeah. Although that is changing demographically. There's a lot more, Spanish-speaking people that live here, generationally speaking. It's kind of hard to, I think, still. So when a family's here long enough, typically a family will come here and their children will be fluently English speaking. So that but it's become more common for there to be a lot of Spanish speaking people and other languages as well. I mean, how do you feel about this? Give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these tempests tossed to me. I light my lamp beside the golden door.
Well, that was a gift from France.
It was. You feel like it was communist infiltration?
And that phraseology came from them. It wasn't something we made and put on it. Yeah. It came with the statue.
Yeah.
What a beautiful statue. Been there, been up in the crown.
Do you remember because they don't let people up in it anymore. You realize that?
I know. We were very fortunate.
Do you remember it smelled like piss in there? Like somebody had peed inside of Lady Liberty's head. That's what I remember. And there was graffiti in there. I was like, who's doing that? But it was cool. They didn't let us go up in the torch. That's the highest point.
Yeah. I guess they hadn't done that since.
But we looked right out our eyes.
The World's Fair featured the arm and the torch.
Yeah.
And you could go up in it then, but since they built the whole thing, you've never been able to go, unless you're Michael Jackson and making a video.
Yep.
They don't allow that.
They closed it. Yeah. So we were lucky to get to see that when we did, because now you can't. They'll probably never let average folks up in that thing again.
You have to go online, make an appointment.
Oh, really? They'll still let you go in, but you have to do okay. Because we just went over and got in a line and did a tour group thing.
Ellis Island was quite a moving experience, I thought.
That whole trip was crazy, man. That informed how I travel and do things to this day, because it was
spontaneous.
It was so seat of our pants, because you had gone to something in Pittsburgh and it ended up sucking or whatever. You just didn't think you were going to learn nothing. You were like, I don't want to be here or whatever. And you were like, I literally, this is how I remember it. Maybe you don't remember it the same way. You came into because I was kind of hanging out in the hotel room while you were at the conference. And then when you would come back, we'd go out and tool around a little bit. And you came back one night and you were like, you want to go to New York? And I was like, yeah. And you were like, all right, pack your shit. And we got our stuff packed and we hit the road, and it was an all-nighter. Remember, we pulled an all-nighter driving up there. One of the memories I have of that is when we were going through like Pennsylvania and then into like West Virginia and all of that, or whatever you're going through. Yeah, I think it is West Virginia. We passed through heading up that way, whatever it was. That dense forest, and we would see these red smears on the road every couple of miles where somebody'd hit a deer. And it was just so absurd. We were counting them at one point.
Yeah. Well, a lot of cars wrecked running into deer.
And then we pulled into New York City, and being the total flat-foot tourists that we were, we had no idea where to go. So we went to Manhattan, right downtown. Yep. And it was 2 or 3 in the morning, and everything was just shut up tight. And it was like, I thought this was a city that never sleeps. Like, why is everything boarded up? We had to pee like a couple of racehorses, couldn't find a spot.
Didn't we go to Battery Field?
We went to Battery Park at 3 in the morning because there was a bathroom there. We went over, it was locked. We ended up peeing in a trash can. There was a hole in the trash can, and the pee just ran down the sidewalk in Battery Park. So we peed on a national monument in the middle of the night. Then we found a parking garage. We thought we were brilliant. You found a 24-hour parking garage. We pulled up in there, kicked back, got comfy, just started to get to sleep. You can't sleep here, sir. You're going to have to go. So we're like, shit. So another brilliant move on your part. We immediately got out, and right next to that place was a double-decker bus, and you booked us a double-decker bus, but we were the only two people sitting inside of it because we slept through half of it.
Yeah.
But then after that, we were good to go.
Yeah.
We walked around. You remember that hotel that we looked at?
That was sketchy.
It was like a...
I paid to go in there, and we got to the room and said, we can't even sleep here.
Yeah.
So we got our money back, luckily, and got out of there.
Yeah, that was crazy.
What Broadway play did we see?
We went and saw two, actually. We saw How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying and Cats.
Oh, that was a bad experience.
Cats was not great. How to Succeed was cool.
Yeah, Matthew Broderick.
Yeah, and we saw him walking around by that t-shirt store.
Yeah, very cool.
It was neat, yeah. I remember you got felt up by presumably a gay man on the subway. And that was a hot topic when we were people watching that day. A dude had walked by you and said something to you and goosed your butt. And it had put you in a mood. It put you in a mood.
In the mood.
Yeah, you were, it was not the mood he wanted to induce in you. It put you in you were in an angry mood. And then we ended up sitting, remember, right across from the Apollo Theater in Harlem. And people watching for like a couple hours. We just sat there. We travel, we're on the same wavelength with that kind of thing. I hate when stuff is over planned and every little second to everything is budgeted. AKA how mom travels. Drives me nuts. I like to just kind of seat of my pants to this day. Because of that trip. It's the first time I ever did something like that. Just like decided to go do something and kind of figured it out when we got there kind of deal, you know?
I have to say, I've often said, it's not where you go, it's who you're with. And
That's
you
true.
and I could have went just about anywhere and had a good time.
That's true.
And there was time in our lives where we just clicked.
Yeah, I mean, we're cut from the same cloth, too. So I think we like a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was easy to find something to do because we like to do the same kind of stuff. So, that was nice. It was cool to get... That was a rarity, that the genuine father-son time is tough when you've got a bunch of sisters and then stepsisters and, it's tough to find a time where it was just you and me, I think.
I want to say about a year later, I had business in New Jersey, and I went to your sister and said, Mary Jo, we'll do the same thing. We'll go to New York. We'll check it out. She says, oh, Dad, I got cheerleading practice. Cheerleading? Hello? So I just let it go, and then years later she said, I really regret that. Cheerleading was dumb. I should have went with you.
Yeah.
PJ got lucky. I said, well, he wanted to go. We went.
Yeah. And I didn't have no promises of no New York either. I was willing to go to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, just to see it.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of person I am still to this day is, I don't go a place necessarily with a huge agenda. I just want to see it. I want to be there. It's neat. And sometimes traveling to it is fun. I like going sometimes. I don't really care the destination. So, but yeah. Well, now that you've made the trip up this way, maybe we can we'll get together again up here, and maybe we can get your brother up here and do some fishing, because this is like fisherman's paradise.
So you're gonna make me bring Sid up here?
Oh yeah,
Your number one fan?
my number one fan.
Yeah, he likes fishing.
Yeah.
Me, not so much. The last time I went deep sea fishing, I got seasick.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that ugly thing. Laying over the board, puking.
Yeah.
Not good. So, yeah. But, yeah. I'm going to have to bring him up here. He really guilted me into trying to get me to bring him this time.
Well, we'll figure something out. Maybe get you guys a hotel room if you come as a duo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay about 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. I forgot. Kind of feel like I want to just no-show that. Look, I have been so good.
I know, but then you're gonna have to pay the cancellation
Look,
fee.
it's worth it for the time.
Well, you should have told me to cancel it.
I know
yesterday.
I'm stupid. I know. They'll forgive me. They might even let me get away with it because I've been so religiously at every one of them.
Do you?
All right.
They're gonna be mad though. They're gonna be disappointed. Remember how sad they
She's
are
gonna-
that other people are no showing?
I know. She's gonna beat me up. But
Are you sure you want to risk the beat up next time?
this is a negotiation here. This is like the devil on my shoulder and the angel on my shoulder.
I'm just saying, like, she'll whoop your butt and she'll make you feel guilty when you go next time.
I
How long, is
know.
it just an hour? How long do you have to go?
It's an hour of torturous nonsense and bull crap.
Sounds like physical therapy to me.
Yes.
We're probably going to cancel next week.
Why?
We're going somewhere.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you ought to go. Maybe you should ask your viewers to see if they want you to go to physical therapy.
They're all going to say no because they want me to sit here and keep yakking.
I don't know. Are they yakking right now?
They are, yeah.
Oh,
They're
go.
Let's see. What is Paul? They're just talking about you still. What is Paul Senior's favorite city? All right, I'm just I'm just not gonna go.
Okay.
I've made up my mind. Charge it to the game. I won't make a habit of it, but I've went to every stinking one of them, so they can suck it up. I'm staying. I've decided. Although the battery on this phone is not eternal, so still waiting for the trumpet story. When we talked about it last night, we remember it pretty much the same.
I mean, there's some doubt.
Well, they think I make things up. So they think I make stuff up. They think I'm like, telling a little fib here and there. And I really try and be objective in my storytelling. Some of them I have a feeling you're a little biased towards me, but I feel like I'm pretty, because I like the stories as they played out.
That particular story is humiliating enough. I don't think you need to embellish it. If you're going to embellish it, you wouldn't have been the lion, the little rat that you
Exactly.
were. Getting your dad in a fight.
That's the whole idea is like, I will tell people that. I'll be like, if I was making stuff up, wouldn't I be the hero of every story? Like, why would I tell you the honest truth about what a dumbass I was? But I don't know, what other stories are we fact checking? What did he think when you got kidnapped? Ooh, a deep one. Yeah, you came and picked me up from the police station.
Yeah, they had to find you something to wear.
Yeah.
You didn't have no clothes. Can you imagine those poor people that you went up on their porch and knocked on
Oh
their
man,
door?
that lady, I felt like she might have shot me. So I had covered myself and I told her I was going to go sit at the end of her driveway. And she did not want me up on her porch.
And she called the police and they came.
She called the cops and told them, I got a druggie out here that's lost his mind and he's naked. Cops showed up. Well, what have you been on tonight, buddy? And I'm like, nothing. He's like, he's like, they stole my car. Once I told him the story, he went out and went like, APV, blah, 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 4 tempo, 1981, white, 5-speed, blah. And as I was driving back into town, they caught him because they had driven right back to downtown Fresno.
Got your car back.
Mm-hmm.
That was awesome. I would think that people would question the validity of that one. That's out there. That doesn't happen to the average Joe.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've never met another human being that's been through... Now, obviously, I've met through victims groups that I've been to and stuff. I've met people that have had guns in their faces and stuff like that. But I've never met someone that's been kidnapped by somebody they didn't know, basically, carjacked, and forced to get naked and run out into a field. That is one thing that combination of that, I don't think I'll ever meet another human being that did it. But a lot of people think that story's bullshit, until they go and look into it, and there's news stories about it from the paper. You just got to go and look at the archives, and there it is.
Fresno Beach.
But it is a wild story. It is a wild, wacky turn of events that happened to me, and definitely a life-changing thing too. But yeah, what did you think about it when that, like, what was it like on your end of it when that happened, in terms of?
Well, I didn't know anything about it until the police called.
Mm-hmm.
I just total shock.
Well, it was the middle of the night. Why would you? You thought I was in bed.
I said, no, it's not him because he's here asleep. And they said, you better go check, and you were gone.
Yeah.
You'd gone out to smoke a cigarette in your car?
Yeah, I was just sitting out there. I'd taken the cordless phone out, and I was talking to Tammy on the phone and just listening to my radio in the car. And that was that. So
I rushed down. You were already there when I got to the police station, and
yeah,
and wearing one of those throwaway things.
It was a hazmat uniform that was 3 sizes too small for me, because that's all they had over there.
Yeah. And it was all happening so fast because by the time I got there, they had found the people, and you needed to ID them. They wanted to know, would you be willing to look at a lineup? And so at least got resolved. You didn't have to worry these guys are still out there.
Yeah.
But not your normal circumstance. And what's up with those guys stripping you off and all that? I mean,
I think they thought that it was going to delay me from seeking help, right? That I was going to be too ashamed to go look, so that I'd probably have till morning. And then somebody'd see me, and they'd be long gone by then.
Ashamed and
the way they went right back to town led me to believe they didn't think I was going to hoof it all the way to that farmhouse.
Yeah.
But as soon as I heard their car drive away,
you were headed for the light.
Oh, I tore my feet up, because I was just, it was 3 or 4 miles worth of traipse.
So you say it changed you. How did it change you from that point on? You didn't stop smoking.
No, definitely not.
I took care of it. I
What?
gave them the heads up for today and for next week.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Took the bullet for me.
Responsible around here.
Yeah. If somebody wasn't, we'd be sitting in a lot less nice of a place. No, thank you, baby.
You gotta give them at least a half hour, nothing else.
I guess that's true.
It's better to do that than just not show up.
That is true. I'm a dick, but at least you won't sit around waiting for me or whatever.
Yeah.
The CB radio shenanigans. Oh, that's a crazy one. They want to fact check that. So me getting in trouble with the CB is a big story of mine. Cussing out truckers, them threatening to show up, and then eventually, I don't think you were involved.
No, you were with your mother.
Well, you helped me get everything set up.
Yeah, because Grandpa was into that.
Yeah.
And he was upgrading his or something.
He had gotten rid of a big aerial and gotten a better one.
Yeah.
And you knew I was into it, and I'd had a tiny little antenna, and you talked Mom into letting you bring it over and helping me strap it to the side of the house.
Yep.
And then helping me hook it into my room.
But I didn't dream that you were.
Well, I'd gotten busted a couple of times before, not by the cops or nothing, but like
your mom came in on you talking smack, or
Mom had overheard me saying some unadvisable stuff, and then remember Bob
Buckles?
Yes.
Yeah.
He had caught me quite a few times. Me and yeah. So because it was his truck that we started it in. He had a little red pickup truck that had a CB radio and a little dual antennas on it, because he worked for the forestry service, and it was his. That's why we got in so much trouble, because we were trolling the local channel, so we knew better than to get on the shortwave or whatever, but we were on the open CB channels. I was 8 cussing truckers up one side and down the other. I'm just talking about, like, we became famous in the area amongst the truckers that did short haul around the area. We had handles and everything.
What was your handle?
Whiz Kid.
Whiz Kid?
Whiz Kid.
And who was your cohort?
The professor.
The professor.
Because we were so whip smart for kids. And because you couldn't get one over on us because we had mouths on us. Because they'd try and get, oh, well, come on, and we would just call them gayer for that. I bet you'd like to kick my ass, you know?
So you get busted. They somehow tracked your signal?
Well, here's what happened. So, yes, the first time that happened was way early. There was a guy named Ghost Rider, and I was over at John's house and spending the night over there, and we were off in Bob's truck doing the breaker 19, I had sex with your wife over. You know what I mean? Who is this on here over? You know what I mean? It was so much fun to get them riled. And I could tell that some of them liked it too. They're bored. It's midnight, you know, in the middle of the night. Got nothing to do. And all of a sudden you can scream and yell at this kid while away an hour or two, you know. But some of them took it personal. And one of them was named Ghost Rider. And he's like, I'm going to come find you. And we thought we were invincible. Because
How could you know?
How would you ever find us? So we were like, oh, yeah, what are you going to do about it, big tough guy? And he's like, you just wait and see. And he disappears. Well, we keep trolling everybody. And little did we know, he was pinging us. So he's driving around town, finding the direction where our signal is hitting a little higher. And he's heading in that way. He came all the way to 145 and Donald Avenue. Or whatever that was that and he keyed up all of a sudden. That's what we called it. Keyed up, and his needle went, and he was like, how's the corner of 145 Donald Avenue sound, kid? And we were like, oh shit. So we ducked down in the garage and hit the lights, and he drove up and down that street. He had one of them like spotlights that's mounted on the driver's side that he could control, and he shone it on on the house across the street. He didn't know which house we were in, but he knew we were in that neighborhood. He knew we were close because he listened until the last second. And that was when we learned we had to be careful. You'd think we would have stopped.
Yeah, I was going to say.
That just fueled the fire. So we learned at that point, number one, we had to make friends with the Ghost Rider because he knew where we were now. So we buddied up with him real quick because he had another dude that he hated. And so we started trolling that guy. And suddenly Ghost Rider was okay with us doing it. Then it was a matter of time. Once I got some of Granddad's old actual base station CB with an aerial, bro, my range was absurd. I was talking to people like up in the mountains, and sometimes in Nevada I could get somebody real weak. So I was really terrorizing the Central Valley of California. And there was another guy named Hightower was his handle. And it ended up being his last name too. He came by one time and parked right out in front of my mom's house where I lived. Just parked there and keyed up and told me, like, look out the window. And I just peeked, and there he was. Just a big fat trucker dude in a pickup truck smoking a cigarette. And I was like, and he sat out there because he was pissed because I was talking shit to him, you know. And so kind of laid off of him after that. Well, come to find out, a few months later, he murdered his wife. Just killed his wife. And in that investigation, one of the things that they had overheard during that investigation was me and John trolling him, among other things, in that way, yeah. And so they pulled me, Mom, into the room, and it was the sheriff, the actual sheriff, not a sheriff, the sheriff, and an agent from the Federal Communications Commission. who told me in no uncertain terms that I was no longer allowed to broadcast via CB radio. I was not to touch one. Told Mom all my shenanigans, read some pretty crazy transcripts that I wish I could get my hands on today, because I'd publish them. I was proud of that work, but I was not proud thinking I was in that much trouble. So yeah, I don't think you were as much involved in that because I was living with Mom at the time, so it fell down on her. And I certainly didn't fill you in. You know, if she wasn't going to tell you, neither was I. But that was crazy. Yeah, that was a wild... But to an extent, I'm still doing that.
Yeah.
I realize that. I rile people up and...
You troll the people that, like...
No.
No way.
No, mostly, I gotta be honest with you, they troll me more than I troll them. But I kind of feed the trolls, is what they call it, because I think it's useful to have people that are trying to get under your skin. You know what I mean? Or people that aren't gonna just like agree with everything you say. I think it's, you know, when they're good at it, I always appreciate it. But I always pull rank. I tell them I've been trolling since before the internet.
Before it was cool.
Yeah, I've been trolling since before what the thing was called trolling. It was just called being a horse's ass back when I was a kid. Now it has this whole method to the madness, you know. I'm one of the innovators, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm one of the innovators, and they give me no respect for that. They disrespect me, the young whippersnapper. Try and come at me like, I don't know if you're aware of this. I don't even know if I want to make you aware. Have you heard of Ligma?
Ligma. I don't even know what it is.
Ligma balls. It's like you get somebody to say something, and then it always has something to do with your balls. Ligma balls. You'll say something. Okay, how about this one? Do you like Wendy's?
Yeah.
Wendy's nuts hit your chin. You know what I mean? It's always so.
It's
so
almost like your mama.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so
Right.
they try and get me with the most elementary of those, and it's just I always ban them people that try that, because I'm like, what disrespect you show.
It's temporary though, because you know you appreciate it a little bit.
Well, of course.
Put a little effort into it next time though. Well,
Yeah.
something new.
Yeah, come back on another alt and at least try, man. Beware the giant worm, yeah.
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 That story is real.
Yeah.
That was there.
It's starting to add up, y'all. It's starting to look like Paul's ego might have been telling the truth. The space aliens and the trip to Mars.
What's up with
Come
that
on,
one?
Dad. Don't act like you don't remember the space
I don't
aliens.
remember a trip to
I'm
Mars.
kidding.
What's up with that?
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. There was no
Me,
space
you,
aliens.
and Elon going to Mars?
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd go. If it's Elon's tech, I don't know if I'd go. I've seen that Cybertruck, man. It's falling apart. Rust bucket.
Yeah, I can see where that was kind of the beginning of what you do for a living. But you weren't thinking that back then.
Oh,
I
heck
can
no.
make a living trashing people.
I just never had.
I'm so good at it.
I'm telling you, Daddy, I think you would have had fun with it too. You never would have engaged in it because you were an adult. But they would get so piping hot mad, but they couldn't do nothing about it. And they would say the most absurd stuff, and we would just be dying. It was some of the funniest stuff ever. And I've just never been able to kind of give up that rush, because it just, you know, it's like, honestly, a couple of 8-year-olds just change the channel, man, or like listen to the radio, be a grown-up about it. They're not following you, you know, it's not going to go on forever. But these men were just, I think a lot of them were bored. Maybe some of them too proud to take it off of somebody. Maybe some of them playing along, right? And it became like a local thing amongst truckers and stuff, you know?
Well, the one that killed his wife Do you feel a little responsibility there?
Hell no. He was a psycho. I didn't kill his wife. He knew I was a 10-year-old kid
You probably
at that
killed
point.
her because you slept with his wife.
He didn't think a 10-year-old slept with that woman.
Like, did you tell people how old you were?
He knew. It was known after a bit that, I mean, they could tell from our voices that we weren't that old. That's hence whiz kid.
I don't even know if CBs are a thing anymore, are they? Do people still, the other truckers do it?
They still have it, yeah. Truckers still have them, and they're still enthusiasts. Every once in a while, because I know what they look like, I'll see an aerial.
Are you still banned to this day?
No.
Is it lifetime ban?
It was till I was 18, and to never misuse the public airwaves again. Admonishment.
Oh, I bet your mom was pissed. Holy moly.
Oh, she was hot. She was hot. She was real hot under the collar about that one. Yeah. I lost. She made me go rip down the aerial. She sold it at a garage sale. Sold the CB radio at a garage sale. I was grounded. It was a whole bunch. It was a mess. It was a mess. I paid in blood. Don't worry. I learned my lesson. Because, yeah, she gave me the, how she gets, too, the guilt tripping. She was like, what if I ended up in prison over this, PJ? You realize that? Your whole family in prison? And I was just like, all right, I'll stop. Gee.
Did you ever communicate with my dad? Because he was in Fresno, but it wouldn't reach that far, right?
Yeah, well, the cool thing about Grandpa was he did shortwave, too. He had CB, and he had a shortwave radio. And so that reaches way far, right? But I never had a shortwave receiver, nor was I licensed. You gotta have a license to do the shortwave. So no, I never got to talk with him. But he was the one that got me into it, for sure, because he would tool around town in his truck, doing errands with me in tow, and he would talk to people. He'd just yak and show me how to do it.
What was his handle? I can't remember.
I can't either.
I could hear him saying breaker, breaker, and then he'd say with the handle.
I'm trying to remember what it was. And I swear I can't remember.
It showed me a different side of him because he was always so angry and drunk, and he became somebody different when he was on that radio. And he was like everybody's friend.
See, I never saw the angry drunk part of Grandpa. You know what I mean? And so that, to me, it was just an extension of who I perceived him as. Yeah. It's just a good-natured, well-known guy that everybody liked, and real smiley and funny and kind of no filter, quick to joke about things and all that stuff, But that's it's just interesting how when you pick things up. I'm sure plenty of kids had a granddad or a dad that had a CB, and they were probably just told, "Don't touch that." That ain't for you, and they just whatever and went on about it. And I became obsessed with it, man, to the point where the federal government had to come and shut me down. So
it's a bit like prank calling to people.
Well, it's kind of like what I'm doing here before that was a thing, right? It's like broadcasting to a wider audience.
Yeah, maybe I enabled you to do that, but
whatever.
I mean, you were getting that carried away.
Nobody but Hightower's wife got hurt in the deal, so you know what I mean. And she shouldn't have been such a floozy.
Sleeping with 9-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, what was she thinking? I mean, granted, I was Mr. Petite, so
it's good that you're remorseful. It shows you got character.
Yeah,
you have a heart.
That's why they let me go.
Poor guy.
I ruined his life. No, I think he had other. I doubt it was me that put the straw that broke the camel's back. But
you never know.
They were watching him for a while after he had murdered her. He was, talking to me quite a bit. So they had a lot of spicy. Mom went white as a ghost because, she let me, you guys let me get away with murder to a certain extent. I think it was because I was a boy, because You realize the amount of privacy I had versus your average kid? Like at mom's at that house, the door that the house the room that was mine had a deadbolt on the door. And I was allowed, because I had sisters who were constantly bugging me, to deadbolt that. That was awesome. But because I had the power to do that, I could deadbolt that, get in there, breaker one. She doesn't know what's going on in there. She knew I was playing with it, but she doesn't know what I'm saying. And then when them transcripts got read out, ooh boy, ooh, I can't believe how foul-mouthed you are. Unbelievable that you said those things. It's like,
It is a little seductive when you know that you're anonymous, that people don't know. So it kind of frees you to say things you normally wouldn't go there.
yeah.
So I can imagine your ability to fat lip and tease these poor truck drivers.
Oh, it got.
Bet you wrecked mini trucks and broke up marriages, and one guy kills his wife. And, well, that's one down. We keep a score. Oh, there goes another one. What happened to that trucker? Oh, he got in a wreck. He got killed.
Yeah.
He was pounded on the steering wheel.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But that was fun. And just like now, I wasn't as anonymous as I thought I was. You know what I mean? With a little bit of gumption, anybody's can kind of find out who and what you are, and that stays true to this day. You know, there's not really a whole lot one can do to functionally and fully hide if somebody's motivated. And these truckers, man, some of them, you know, the funny thing was I made a lot of friends, inappropriate friends, but some of them, and like you don't get a hand. I didn't appropriate myself the whiz kid. You're given a handle amongst truckers, right? And so I had my supporters and my detractors, you know what I mean? I had some people, because I would jump on their side when they needed help sometimes, and hey, I was good at it, you know? Bring in the heavy hitter, get the whiz kid out here. And I knew all their names and all that. Well, not their real names, but their, you know, their handles and all their drama going on between them and where they worked. And I was just listening, man. A lot of what the CB time, I didn't even spend talking to them. I would obsessively sit there by that thing with my headphones on and just turn the knob, channel to channel, right? Up the dial. Till I found an interesting conversation. Then I just eavesdrop on it. Public airwaves, you know? And they would talk about the craziest stuff, but I'd use it against them. See? That was the smart thing. I'd overhear problems with the wife. Well, of course, I know all about that.
9 years old.
But, you know, it was interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, I have to say you were at your mom's. I wasn't, other than helping you, facilitating it. I was not there, so you can't blame that one on me.
Nope. Your hands are clean on that one.
Was it after that is when you came to live with me over at the other house?
It was, you know, I don't know if that was, that might have been. She locked me down pretty hard. I think it was the year after I got busted smoking pot. And I didn't even really get busted. I fessed. I was just straight up honest. I came home one night, and you know, Steve's an old hippie, so and Mom's been around it too, so they knew what it smelled like, and apparently they smelled it on me, and I went straight to bed. I wasn't in trouble. I wasn't out past curfew or nothing. But when I woke up the next day, they questioned me about it. What was that last night? And I just told them, I said, look, I smoked a little pot with my friends. You know what I mean? You guys always say don't lie because that'll get you in worse trouble. So there you go. You know, I know I'm not supposed to, but we were safe about it. We got a person that drives, doesn't smoke, and that was true. I wouldn't BSing them. You know, I wasn't stupid. But you know, once again, that didn't. So I got the short end of the stick on that one because I got grounded a whole summer.
Whoa.
Couldn't go out with my friends. Couldn't play video games, couldn't do anything, couldn't leave the house basically without permission all summer. And this is the kicker. 2 years later, I'm living with you because I was done with that. At that point, that was enough. You know what I mean? I needed to live with you because I knew, as long as I wasn't getting in trouble with it, you probably weren't going to catch me getting high. So, and you didn't really care. Didn't seem like it. Would you have cared if you knew that me and my friends were smoking reefer in the backyard pretty much the whole time I lived there? Would that have ticked you off at the time, do you think?
Well, I'd rather you do it there than be out driving. And
That was kind of mom's mentality about drinking. Yeah. But no, I mean, yeah. So, I knew that you probably were going to not keep as close an eye on the comings and goings in that way. And so that,
I do remember a story about the loser crew in the backyard on
Oh,
the
man.
patio.
Oh, there.
smoking. And I got called into work and didn't realize you guys were out there, and I got filthy. It was working in a silo, and we had a breakdown, and I just got dust all in unspeakable places.
Yeah.
So I stripped off coming through the side gate and dove in the pool naked.
Yeah.
And when I came up, I look over, and there's all you and your buddies on the patio, and my clothes are clear over by the gate, so I had to do the walk of shame.
I remember that now.
But, yeah,
I'd forgotten about that.
I want to say Elowen was there, which
Yeah.
kind of added a little more twist to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we were friends long before we ever dated, so.
Yeah. I have to say, years later, matter of fact, Elowen was in the apartment with you for a while, right? And I gave her a ride to her job. I think it was Starbucks or wherever it was, and she hit on me.
Yeah. She was a wild one.
She's obviously old enough to be your dad.
Yeah, she was a wild one, that one. Yeah,
Oh.
no. She was, I bear no animosity. I'm happy for every relationship I've been in because they were all positive at times and they were learning. I needed to figure it out. And I'm happy that I think I chose well because nobody was horrible, unbelievably horrible to me ever. It was always okay. So we were just kids doing stupid kid stuff. But yeah. I'll tell your dad about the woman you were catfishing. He knows about it. Because she called in the middle of the night and he came downstairs in his skivvies to yell at me. You remember that? Grown woman called in the middle of the night. You came downstairs in your skivvies like there's a woman on the phone asking for this name that I'd made up. Did you know that?
Vaguely.
Yeah. You busted me for it, but just the call. And see, that's the thing is I had my own line, remember? I had my own line into the house.
For the modem.
But I was ghosting her. I wasn't picking up her phone call, and she somehow figured out who owned that line, found out in the yellow pages your number, and called you at like 2 a.m, asking for a name you'd never heard because I made it up.
You were scheming on her? Was that the deal?
She was 29.
And
I started talking to her when I was 15. Yeah, all the way up until I was about 18 or so. I talked to the lady. Yeah, it was nuts. And you would think that when she figured that out, she would have dumped me. She did for about 2 months, and then she came back. Fuzz Nugget. Anyway, phone is about to die. I think we'll call this one a wrap. I don't know. I didn't see a single negative comment about you the whole time.
I'm gonna try harder.
There was a ton of negativity about me, though. Oh my God.
Wasn't that normal? But
Yeah.
They always troll you a little bit.
Yeah. I'm the guy they love to hate and hate to love, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for watching. Maybe we'll see you some other time. Bye.